Weakness is a death sentence in a wolf pack. That's what Kira's father told her before he died, defending their borders. But as the blizzard howled and 15 wolves clawed at her cabin door, she would learn that sometimes the weakest wolf holds the key to the strongest king's survival, and that destiny doesn't care about your rank when it comes scratching at your door in the dead of winter. Kira pressed her forehead against the frosted window of her cabin, watching the silver pine pack gather in the clearing below. Even from a distance, she could feel the weight of their disdain, a tangible thing that settled on her shoulders like the heavy snow blanketing the mountains. "Look at her up there." Sylvia's voice carried on the wind, sharp and cutting, too weak to even join the hunt. "What good is a wolf who can't shift properly?" Kira's hand instinctively moved to her left arm, where the shift never quite completed. While other wolves transformed with fluid grace, her transformations were agonizing, incomplete things. Her wolf form was smaller, weaker, an omega in a pack that valued strength above all else. She'd been born this way. Her mother had died, bringing her into the world during a blood moon, and the pack elders whispered that Kira had stolen her mother's strength in the womb, leaving herself cursed and her mother drained. Her father, the pack's former beta, had loved her anyway. He'd taught her to read the old texts, to understand herb lore, to find worth in knowledge when her body failed her. But he'd been dead 3 years now, killed defending the northern border from rogues. Without his protection, Kira had become the pack's shame, kept alive only because ancient law forbade killing pack members, but treated as little more than a servant. "Kira," Alpha Donovan's voice boomed from below. "Get down here and make yourself useful for once." She pulled on her worn coat and trudged through the snow to the pack house. The structure loomed large and warm, smoke curling from its chimneys while her cabin, set apart from the others, remained cold and dark. Omegas didn't deserve to share the communal fires. Inside, the pack was preparing for the winter hunt, a sacred tradition where the strongest wolves would track and bring down an elk to honor the moon goddess. Kira was directed to the kitchens, where she'd spend the next hours preparing food she wouldn't be allowed to eat. "Don't touch the meat," Sylvia sneered, appearing in the doorway. The beta's daughter was everything Kira wasn't: tall, powerful, beautiful, with a wolf form that made other packs jealous. She was also Alpha Donovan's chosen mate, set to become Luna in the spring. Your weakness might contaminate it. Kira kept her head down and continued chopping vegetables. She'd learned long ago that responding only made things worse. "I heard something interesting," Sylvia continued, circling her like a predator. "The Alpha King is coming through our territory. Can you imagine? Theron Blackwood himself, the most powerful Alpha in 500 years. Her eyes gleamed. Of course Donovan will offer him proper hospitality. A strong pack for a strong king. We'll make sure you're locked away in your cabin when he arrives. Can't have him thinking we're weak because we harbor defective wolves." The words stung, but Kira had grown armor over the years. She finished her work in silence and returned to her cabin as the sun set, painting the snow blood red. That night, the blizzard came. It arrived without warning, a wall of white fury that swallowed the world. Kira huddled by her meager fire, wrapped in every blanket she owned, and listened to the wind scream, like dying souls. The temperature plummeted, her breath frosted in the air despite the flames. She was adding her last log to the fire when she heard it, a sound that made her wolf stir uneasily inside her chest. Scratching. Not the scratch of wind-blown branches. This was deliberate, insistent. Claws on wood. Kira moved to the window and immediately stumbled back. Wolves. 15 of them, their eyes reflecting the firelight, their massive forms barely visible through the driving snow. But these weren't pack wolves. Their scent was wrong, foreign and wild, touched with something else, something that made her incomplete wolf whimper in recognition and fear. Rogues. They had to be. No organized pack would send 15 wolves to an Omega's door. The scratching intensified. The door shuddered under their assault. Kira's mind raced. The pack house was half a mile away. She'd never make it through the blizzard. Her cabin was sturdy, but not meant to withstand a sustained attack from 15 full-grown wolves. And even if she screamed, even if by some miracle the pack heard her, would they come? For an Omega? She knew the answer. The door cracked. One of the hinges groaned. Kira grabbed the iron poker from beside the fireplace, a pathetic weapon against 15 wolves, but the only one she had. Her hands shook, her heart hammered against her ribs. Then one of the wolves did something unexpected. Instead of breaking through, it stepped back. The others followed, creating a semicircle in front of her door, and the largest wolf, a massive creature with silver-black fur and eyes like molten gold, lowered itself to the ground. Not in attack position, in submission. The wolf's eyes met hers through the window, and Kira felt something crack open in her chest, a sensation like recognition, like coming home, like every story her father had ever told her about fated mates and ancient bonds. No, impossible. Omegas didn't have fated mates. The moon goddess didn't waste such gifts on broken wolves. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger, pulling at something deep in her soul. The large wolf whimpered, actually whimpered, and that's when Kira saw the blood, dark against the snow, pooling beneath its body. The other wolves were injured too, she realized. Gashes and bite marks covered their flanks. Whatever they were running from, it had hurt them badly. They weren't attacking, they were seeking shelter. Every instinct screamed at her to leave the door barred. These were strange wolves, possibly dangerous, certainly not her responsibility. Let them freeze. Let them die. That's what the pack would do. But Kira had never been good at doing what the pack would do. She had perhaps 30 seconds to make a choice that would change everything. The large wolf's golden eyes held hers, and in them she saw something she recognized intimately: desperation. The kind born from being cast out, from being hunted, from having nowhere left to run. Kira's hand moved to the door lock. "Moon goddess, help me," she whispered, and pulled it open. If stories like Kira's remind you that courage isn't about strength, but about choosing compassion when the world expects cruelty, subscribe to join others who believe the smallest wolf can have the biggest heart. Chapter 2. The Alpha King's Secret. The wolves surged forward the moment Kira opened the door, but not with the violence she'd braced for. They moved with urgent purpose, the smaller ones helping the injured, their breaths coming in desperate pants, as they escaped the blizzard's fury. Kira pressed herself against the wall as they flooded her tiny cabin. Too many bodies, too much heat, too much wild scent filling the space. Her wolf cowered inside her, overwhelmed by the presence of so many dominant predators. The large silver-black wolf entered last, moving with visible difficulty. Up close, Kira could see the true extent of his injuries: deep gashes across his ribs, a nasty wound on his rear leg, blood matting his fur. He collapsed near her fireplace, his breathing labored. The other wolves immediately formed a protective circle around him, their body language clear. This wolf was their leader, and they would die defending him. Kira's hands shook as she closed and barred the door. What had she done? 15 strange wolves now filled her cabin, and the largest, clearly an alpha, was badly wounded. If he died here, would the others turn on her? If the pack discovered what she'd done, would they finally have their excuse to banish her? The alpha wolf's golden eyes tracked her movement. Even injured, even surrounded by his guards, his gaze held an intensity that made her breath catch. That impossible feeling of recognition pulsed stronger, making her incomplete wolf stir restlessly. "You're hurt," Kira said, her voice barely above a whisper. Speaking to wolves in their animal form felt absurd, but something in those golden eyes told her he understood every word. I have some supplies. Basic field medicine my father taught me." She moved slowly to her cabinet, acutely aware of 15 pairs of eyes following her every gesture. Her father's medical kit was old but well maintained. He'd been a warrior, and warriors knew how to treat battle wounds. When she approached the alpha with bandages and her jar of healing salve, 2 of the wolves growled low warnings. The alpha made a sharp sound, not quite a bark, more like a command, and they immediately fell silent, though their hackles remained raised. "I'm going to touch you now," Kira said, kneeling beside him. "I promise I'm trying to help." This close, she could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the intelligence burning in those golden eyes. This was no ordinary wolf. No ordinary alpha. The power emanating from him made her omega instincts scream to submit, to bare her throat, to acknowledge his dominance. But he was bleeding on her floor, and her father had taught her that healing knew no rank. She cleaned the worst of the wounds with snow melted over her fire, then applied the salve, a mixture of yarrow, comfrey, and other herbs known to stop bleeding and fight infection. The alpha remained perfectly still, though she could feel his muscles tense beneath her hands when she touched the deepest gashes. "These are claw marks," she murmured, more to herself than to him, but bigger than any wolf I've ever seen. "What were you running from?" The alpha's eyes darkened, and one of the smaller wolves, a russet female, let out a low, mournful howl that made Kira's skin prickle. "Never mind," Kira said quickly. "It's none of my business. I'm just going to bandage this, and then you can all rest. The blizzard should pass by morning." She worked in silence, wrapping his ribs as best she could, while he remained in wolf form. It was awkward, imperfect, but better than nothing. When she finished, the alpha did something that made her heart stutter. He pressed his massive head against her hand, in a gesture of unmistakable gratitude. The touch sent a shock through her entire body. That feeling of recognition exploded into certainty, and Kira jerked back as if burned. "No, no, no." She scrambled away, putting distance between herself and the alpha. The other wolves watched her with what looked disturbingly like knowing expressions. "You need to leave," she said, her voice shaking. "When the storm passes, you need to go. All of you. If my pack finds you here, if they find out I helped you." The alpha made a sound that could only be described as a disagreement. "I'm serious," Kira insisted. "You don't understand. I'm nothing, less than nothing. An omega who can barely shift. If the pack discovers I've sheltered strange wolves, they'll—" She stopped, unwilling to voice the punishments she'd face. The alpha pulled himself to his feet, despite his injuries. He moved toward her with deliberate slowness, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. She didn't. Couldn't. Her feet remained rooted as he approached, drawn by that inexplicable pull. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel his breath on her face. Then he did something impossible. His form began to shimmer. "Don't," Kira gasped. "You're too injured to shift. The transformation will tear your wounds open." But he was already changing. The shift was seamless, powerful, nothing like her own agonizing transformations. In seconds, a man stood before her, and Kira's breath caught in her throat. He was magnificent, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver-black hair, and those same molten gold eyes. The wounds she'd bandaged in his wolf form translated to his human body, bandages wrapped around his ribs, blood seeping through in places. He swayed slightly, catching himself against the wall. "You," he said, his voice deep and rough, "are far more than nothing." Kira stared at him, her mind refusing to process what was happening. Behind him, several other wolves shifted as well, warriors in human form, all watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man smiled, though pain flickered across his features. "My name is Theron Blackwood, and you, little Omega, just saved the Alpha King's life." The room tilted. Kira's knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Theron hadn't caught her, his injured body moving with impossible speed to keep her upright. "Easy," he murmured, his hands warm on her arms. "The Alpha King," Kira repeated numbly. "Sylvia said. She said you were coming through our territory, but she said the pack would prepare, that there would be ceremonies and—" "We were ambushed," one of the other men said. He had russet hair and sharp features. "The female wolf who'd howled earlier, 3 miles from your pack's borders. Shadow beasts. Someone sent them specifically to kill the king." "Shadow beasts." Kira had heard stories, creatures from the void realm, summoned only through dark magic and blood sacrifice. They were nearly unstoppable, capable of killing even the strongest alphas. "How did you escape?" she asked. "Barely," Theron said grimly. "We lost 4 guards. Would have lost more if we hadn't found your cabin." His golden eyes locked on hers. "Why did you open the door, Kira?" She froze. "How do you know my name?" "I don't. Not officially. But I can feel it." He placed a hand over his heart. "Here. Just like you can feel something too. Can't you?" Kira wanted to deny it, wanted to laugh and call him crazy. But the lie wouldn't come. "It's impossible," she whispered. "Omegas don't have fated mates. The moon goddess doesn't. She wouldn't." "The moon goddess," Theron interrupted gently, "doesn't make mistakes. And she certainly doesn't care about pack politics or artificial rankings." He swayed again, his face going pale. "You need to sit down before you fall down," Kira said, her healing instincts overriding her shock. She guided him to her bed, the only real furniture in the cabin, besides 2 chairs. "And you," she pointed at the russet-haired warrior, "need to shift back. Your human form is losing too much blood." The warrior glanced at Theron, who nodded permission. Within seconds, a wolf again, curled up near the fireplace. Kira moved through her cabin like a general commanding troops, directing the wolves to positions where they could rest without overcrowding, checking wounds, applying more salve where needed. It was easier than thinking about what Theron had said, easier than acknowledging the mate bond she could feel strengthening with every passing moment. "You're good at this," Theron observed, watching her work. "Healing. My father taught me." He said knowledge was worth more than strength. She didn't look at him. The pack disagreed. "Your pack are fools." The simple statement, delivered with absolute conviction, made something crack in Kira's chest. When was the last time someone had defended her? When had anyone ever suggested the pack was wrong, and she was right? "Why were you alone in this cabin during a blizzard?" Theron asked. "Where's your pack?" "Where they always are. Together." Kira gestured vaguely toward the pack house. "Omegas live separately. We're not really part of the pack. Not truly." Theron's expression darkened dangerously. "They exile you? For being Omega?" "Not exile. Just separation. For everyone's good." She'd repeated the pack's reasoning so many times it almost sounded logical. Almost. "That's not how packs are supposed to work," Theron said quietly. "Every wolf, regardless of rank, deserves protection, deserves family. Your alpha is breaking the oldest laws." "He's your subject," Kira pointed out. "All alphas answer to the Alpha King, don't they?" Theron's smile was sharp and cold. "They do indeed. And I think Alpha Donovan and I need to have a conversation about pack law." His expression softened as he looked at her. "But first, we need to survive the night. Those shadow beasts, whoever sent them will know they failed to kill me. They'll send hunters by morning." "Then you need to reach the pack house," Kira said. "Alpha Donovan might be cruel, but he wouldn't refuse to help the Alpha King. It's suicide. Every pack would turn on him." "No." Theron's voice was firm. "Someone knew our route through this territory. Someone knew exactly where to place the ambush. Until I know who I can trust, I'm not walking into an unknown pack house." The implication hit Kira like a physical blow. "You think someone in my pack set the ambush?" "I think someone did. Whether it was your pack, or they were simply compromised, I don't know yet." He met her eyes. "But I know I can trust you. The mate bond doesn't lie." There it was again. That word. Mate. "This is insane," Kira said. "You don't even know me." "If you say you're nothing one more time," Theron interrupted, his voice taking on the unmistakable command of an alpha, "I'm going to have to prove you very, very wrong." The words sent heat flooding through Kira's body. Her Omega wolf, usually so timid, suddenly wanted nothing more than to submit to this alpha, to accept the bond, to... A howl split the night, not from inside the cabin. From outside, all 15 wolves were on their feet instantly, hackles raised, teeth bared, Theron shifted back to wolf form despite his wounds, positioning himself between Kira and the door. "What is that?" Kira whispered. Another howl answered. Then another. A chorus of voices that made her blood run cold. The russet wolf, still in animal form, let out a low, terrified whine. Theron's thoughts pushed into her mind, the mate bond allowing communication. Shadow beasts. They've found us. And then the cabin door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and darkness. Chapter 3. Darkness at the Door. The creature that poured through the shattered doorway wasn't a wolf. It wasn't anything that should exist in the natural world. Shadow beasts were aptly named, living darkness given form and fury. This one stood 8 feet tall, its body a writhing mass of black smoke and solid shadow, with eyes that burned like red coals. Claws made of crystallized void scraped against the wooden floor, leaving gouges that smoked and hissed. Kira screamed. Theron's wolves attacked as one, a coordinated strike that spoke of years fighting together. They hit the shadow beast from 3 sides simultaneously, teeth and claws finding purchase in the creature's semi-solid form. The beast roared, a sound like metal scraping against stone, and lashed out with those impossible claws. The russet wolf went flying, crashing into the wall hard enough to crack the timber. 2 others were thrown back, blood spraying from deep gashes across their flanks. Theron leaped for the creature's throat, his alpha strength and size making him a blur of silver-black fury. His teeth sank into shadow flesh, and for a moment Kira thought he might actually tear the thing apart. Then 2 more shadow beasts forced their way through the door. "No," Kira whispered, backing against the far wall. This was it. This was how she died, torn apart by creatures of nightmare, while trying to save wolves who weren't even her pack. But dying didn't frighten her as much as the thought of Theron dying. Her mate. The bond screamed at her to protect him, to help him, to do something. Except she was useless. An Omega who could barely shift. What could she possibly... Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Strength isn't just about claws and teeth, little moon. The oldest wolves knew secrets. The ancient ways. Never forget. Knowledge is power." The ancient ways. Kira's eyes darted to her father's bookshelf, the one luxury she'd kept after his death. Dozens of old texts, most of them considered worthless by the pack. Histories and legends and forgotten lore, including one specific tome her father had made her memorize passages from, even though she'd never understood why. The Book of Binding. "Theron," she shouted over the chaos. "Keep them back for 30 seconds. She didn't wait for confirmation, just lunged for the bookshelf. Her hands closed around the ancient leather binding, and she yanked the book free, pages falling open to passages written in the old tongue, the language wolves spoke before they learned human speech. Shadow beasts were creatures of void and dark magic, but her father had taught her that all magic had rules, all power had weaknesses, and binding spells were the oldest magic of all. Kira's hands shook as she found the passage she needed. The words were complex, the pronunciation nearly impossible for her human throat, but her father had made her practice, over and over, until she could speak the ancient tongue as fluently as English. She began to chant. The effect was immediate. The shadow beasts turned toward her as one, their burning red eyes fixing on her with sudden, terrible focus. They'd been created to kill the Alpha King, but the old magic commanded their attention like nothing else could. "Kira, what are you doing?" Theron's voice in her mind was sharp with fear. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Breaking the chant would shatter the spell. The words flowed from her lips, growing stronger, more confident. Her father's lessons had been clear. Binding spells didn't destroy. They contained. They forced creatures back to their realm of origin, but they required absolute focus, perfect pronunciation, and most critically, a sacrifice. Blood magic always demanded payment. Kira grabbed the iron poker from beside the fireplace and drew it across her palm without hesitation. Pain bloomed bright and hot, but she didn't stop chanting. She let the blood drip onto the wooden floor, forming a circle around herself. The shadow beasts shrieked. They lunged toward her, claws extended, death incarnate. Theron threw himself between Kira and the creatures, his wounded body absorbing a blow meant for her. He went down hard, blood spraying from reopened wounds. No! Kira's concentration wavered, the chant stuttering. The shadow beasts pressed forward, sensing weakness. But then something impossible happened. Kira felt it, a surge of power that wasn't her own. It flowed through the mate bond, Theron's alpha strength pouring into her, despite his injuries. His voice in her mind was steady, absolute. Take what you need. I trust you. An alpha, giving power to an omega. It was unheard of. It was forbidden by a dozen pack laws. It was exactly what she needed. Kira's voice rose, strengthened by Theron's power flowing through their bond. The ancient words became a command that shook the cabin walls. Her blood circle began to glow with silver light, the moon goddess's blessing on old magic properly invoked. The shadow beasts screamed. Reality itself seemed to tear around them, and Kira saw it, the void realm, a yawning chasm of darkness that existed between worlds. The binding spell was working, forcing the creatures back to where they came from. The first shadow beast was sucked into the tear like water down a drain, its shrieks fading as it disappeared. The second followed, claws scraping futilely against the wooden floor. The third resisted. It was stronger than the others, older perhaps, and it fought the pull with terrible desperation. Its claws extended toward Kira, and even with Theron's power, she could feel the spell weakening. I need more, she gasped, blood still dripping from her palm. The spell needs more blood. Take mine. A new voice. The russet wolf had shifted to human form, a woman with fierce eyes and fresh wounds across her ribs. She crawled forward and slashed her own palm, letting blood drip into Kira's circle, for the king. And mine, another warrior said, adding his blood to the offering. One by one, Theron's wolves contributed their blood to the circle, their faith in their king extending to the omega he'd claimed as mate. The combined power of their sacrifice fed the spell, and Kira felt the magic surge to a crescendo. The third shadow beast shrieked one final time, and was torn back through the void tear, reality sealed behind it, with a sound like thunder, and suddenly the cabin was quiet, except for labored breathing and the howl of the wind through the broken door. Kira collapsed. Theron caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest despite his own wounds. His heart thundered beneath her ear, proof that he was alive. They were both alive. What? He said breathlessly. Was that? Binding spell. Kira managed. Old magic. My father, he taught me. I never thought. She looked up at Theron's face, seeing wonder and something else, something that looked like pride. Did it work? Are they gone? Sent back to the void realm, the russet-haired woman confirmed. She was pressing cloth against her wounds, her expression showing grudging respect. That was ancient magic. Where did an omega learn the old tongue? My father believed knowledge was worth more than strength, Kira said quietly. Your father, Theron said, was absolutely right. He cupped her face with one bloody hand. You saved all of us. An omega, cast aside by her pack, just defeated creatures that can kill alpha kings. I had help, Kira protested. Your power through the bond, and everyone's blood for the sacrifice. You knew the spell. You had the courage to use it. You chose to act when you could have run. Theron's golden eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Do you understand what this means? The mate bond allowed power transfer, because the moon goddess recognized what you are. Not an omega. Not weak. You're my equal, Kira. My true mate. The words should have been impossible. Everything she'd been taught said omegas were lesser, weaker, unworthy of such bonds. But the proof was impossible to deny. She'd channeled an alpha king's power and survived. She'd cast magic that should have killed someone of her rank. She'd faced shadow beasts and won. The door, one of the warriors said urgently. We need to seal it before. A howl cut through the night. Not a shadow beast this time. Wolves, Dozens of them, their voices raised in alarm. The pack, Kira whispered, her stomach dropping. They heard the fighting. They're coming. Theron's expression hardened. Good. I have questions for your alpha about how shadow beasts knew to ambush us in his territory. You can't, Kira said, desperately. You're injured. Your wolves are injured. Alpha Donovan has 40 warriors. And I'm the Alpha King. Theron's voice carried absolute authority. He bends knee or he answers for treason. Those are his only options. The howls grew closer. Through the broken door, Kira could see torches bobbing through the snow. The pack, armed and ready for battle. Kira, Alpha Donovan's voice boomed across the clearing. What have you done? What is happening? Theron pulled himself to his feet, drawing Kira up with him. Despite his wounds, despite the blood, he stood like the king he was, proud and unbreakable. Let me handle this, he murmured to Kira. They'll kill you if they see you as a threat, she whispered back. Donovan doesn't think like other alphas. He's paranoid, cruel. If he thinks you're here to challenge his authority, I am here to challenge his authority. Theron's smile was sharp, among other things. The pack burst into the clearing, 40 wolves in battle formation. Alpha Donovan led them in human form, a massive man with gray-streaked hair and cold eyes. Sylvia stood at his right hand, her expression twisted with fury as she took in the destroyed cabin and the strange wolves inside. Explain yourself, Omega, Donovan commanded. You've brought rogues into our territory. He stopped, his eyes widening as he finally saw Theron clearly. You're Theron Blackwood, the Alpha King said calmly, and you need to explain why shadow beasts ambushed my convoy 3 miles from your border. The clearing went dead silent. Donovan's face cycled through a dozen expressions: shock, fear, calculation. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. Alpha King, we had no idea you were traveling through our territory. If we had known, you would have what? Prepared a proper welcome? Sent guards to ensure safe passage? Theron's voice was cold. Or would you have ensured the ambush succeeded? That's treason talk, Donovan said, but Kira could hear the fear beneath his bluster. I would never. Then explain how creatures that require blood sacrifice and dark magic appeared in your territory at the exact location where my convoy would pass. Theron stepped forward, and every wolf in his guard moved with him, a show of unified strength despite their injuries. Explain how this Omega, cast aside and forced to live alone, was the only one who came to the Alpha King's aid when shadow beasts attacked. All eyes turned to Kira. She wanted to disappear, to make herself small and invisible like she'd learned to do. But Theron's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through her bloody palm. The gesture was clear, unmistakable. Sylvia's gasp was audible even across the clearing. No, that's impossible. She's an Omega. She's nothing. You can't possibly. She's my mate, Theron said, his voice ringing with authority. Blessed by the moon goddess, and proven through the mate bond. And you will address her as such, or answer to me personally. The world tilted sideways. Kira heard the words, understood them, but couldn't quite process that Theron had just announced their bond to an entire pack, to witnesses who would spread the news across every territory. The Alpha King had claimed an Omega as his true mate. Alpha Donovan's face went white, then red with rage. This is some kind of trick. A political play to undermine my authority. I won't. You will kneel, Theron interrupted, his alpha command rolling out like thunder, or you will be removed from power for harboring traitors and allowing attacks on your king. Choose now, Donovan. The weight of an Alpha King's command was something no wolf could fully resist. Kira watched as Donovan's knees buckled against his will, his body responding to authority that superseded his own alpha dominance. One by one, the pack followed their alpha down, until 40 wolves knelt in the snow, all except Sylvia. This isn't over, she hissed, her eyes locked on Kira with pure hatred. You think you've won? You think being the king's whore makes you special? You're still the same weak, worthless Omega you've always been. Theron moved with speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone so injured. He was in front of Sylvia in seconds, his hand wrapped around her throat, lifting her off her feet. "Speak about my mate again," he said quietly, "and I'll rip out your tongue and feed it to my wolves. Are we clear?" Sylvia's eyes bulged with terror. She managed a strangled nod. Theron dropped her carelessly and turned back to address the pack. "At dawn, I want every wolf assembled in your pack house. We're going to have a very long conversation about pack law, the treatment of Omegas, and who in your territory has been practicing dark magic." His golden eyes swept across the gathered wolves. "And if I find out anyone here had knowledge of the ambush and stayed silent, I will personally ensure they face the old punishment, blood for blood." The old punishment meant execution. Every wolf present understood. Theron turned to his russet-haired warrior. "Sienna, take 5 guards and sweep the perimeter. I want to know if any more threats are coming." "Yes, my king." The woman shifted to wolf form and disappeared into the blizzard with half of Theron's guards. "The rest of you," Theron addressed Donovan's pack, "will provide warm shelter and food for my remaining guards. They fought shadow beasts to protect your territory tonight. Show proper gratitude or answer for your disrespect." It was a command no alpha could refuse. Donovan's pack members began moving, some shifting to wolf form, others heading back toward the pack house to prepare accommodations. Finally, Theron turned to Kira. The hardness left his expression, replaced by something soft and concerned. "You need your hand treated properly, and we both need rest before dawn." "My cabin is destroyed," Kira said numbly, staring at the broken door and the scorch marks from the shadow beasts. "Then we'll use the pack house." At her expression, Theron's eyes glinted. "You're the Alpha King's mate, Kira. You don't sleep in broken cabins anymore. You sleep beside me, in the finest room available, and every wolf in this pack acknowledges your status or deals with me. Understood?" Kira wanted to argue, wanted to say this was too much, too fast, too impossible. But she was exhausted, bleeding, and her entire world had turned upside down in the span of a few hours. So instead, she simply nodded and let Theron guide her through the snow toward the pack house, toward a future she'd never imagined possible. Behind them, Alpha Donovan watched with eyes full of calculation and barely concealed rage. And somewhere in the darkness, something else watched too. Something that had sent the shadow beasts. Something that wouldn't be pleased they'd failed. Chapter 4. The Pack House Revelation. The pack house felt different when you walked through its doors as the Alpha King's mate instead of a servant. Every wolf they passed dropped their eyes in submission, not to Kira, she knew, but to Theron's claiming of her. The bond mark would appear by morning, a silver sigil that would bloom across her neck where he'd eventually complete the mating bite. Every wolf would see it. Every wolf would know. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "The Alpha's guest suite," Donovan said stiffly, leading them up the main stairs. His submission was reluctant, forced by Theron's authority, rather than genuine respect. "It's the finest room we have." "It will do," Theron said dismissively. His hand never left the small of Kira's back, a possessive gesture that made her Omega wolf preen even as her human mind reeled. Sylvia appeared at the top of the stairs, her expression carefully neutral now, though hatred still burned in her eyes. "I've had servants prepare the room. Clean linens, fresh water, bandages for your wounds." Her gaze flickered to Kira. "Though I suppose she knows how to tend injuries. It's about all Omegas are good for." "Sylvia." Donovan's voice was sharp with warning, but Theron just smiled, cold and predatory. "Actually, this Omega knows how to cast binding spells in the old tongue, channel alpha power through a mate bond, and defeat creatures that have killed warriors 3 times your size. What exactly are you good for, besides jealousy and poor judgment?" Sylvia's face flushed red. She opened her mouth, then thought better of it and stormed away, her footsteps echoing down the hall. "Your daughter has a viper's tongue," Theron observed to Donovan. "You should teach her when to use it, and when silence serves better." She's spirited, Donovan said carefully, and she's had expectations about her future that tonight's revelations have disrupted. Her expectations are not my concern. Theron pushed open the door to the guest suite. We'll speak at dawn. Have your entire pack assembled, and Donovan, make sure whoever practices dark magic in your territory doesn't flee in the night. I want them found. It was a dismissal. Donovan recognized it, his jaw clenching before he gave a stiff bow and retreated. The moment the door closed, Theron's commanding presence wavered. He caught himself against the doorframe, his face going pale. You're bleeding again, Kira said, immediately moving to support him. The Shadow Beast's attack reopened everything. You shouldn't have shifted, shouldn't have confronted the pack. Had to establish dominance. Theron let her guide him to the bed, an enormous four-poster that could easily fit 3 wolves. Had to make sure they understood you're under my protection. If I'd shown weakness, they would have sensed it and pushed back, Kira finished. She'd seen it happen countless times, wolves testing boundaries, seeking weaknesses in the hierarchy. But you can't maintain that facade if you collapse from blood loss. She began unwrapping the bandages she'd applied in her cabin, wincing at what she found beneath. The wounds were deep, still seeping blood despite her salve. The Shadow Beast's claws carry void poison, Theron said quietly. It prevents normal healing. Even alpha regeneration is slowed. Why didn't you tell me? Kira's hands shook as she grabbed fresh bandages from the supplies Sylvia had left. If I'd known... You would have what? Panicked? Refused to let me confront the pack? Theron caught her wrist gently. I've survived worse, Kira. I'll survive this. You can't know that. I can. His golden eyes held hers, because I have something now I didn't have during previous battles. I have you, my mate, and the Moon Goddess doesn't grant true mate bonds just to tear them apart. The certainty in his voice made something crack open in Kira's chest. How can you be so sure? You barely know me. This bond, it happened so fast. What if you're not worthy? Theron finished for her. What if the pack was right about you being less than? What if I made a mistake, claiming an Omega? Kira flinched. Hearing her fears spoken aloud made them real, undeniable. Those thoughts are lies planted by wolves, who needed you to feel small so they could feel big, Theron said firmly. He pulled her down to sit beside him on the bed. Listen to me, Kira. I've been Alpha King for 15 years. I've met thousands of wolves from every territory. Alphas, betas, warriors, wolves bred and trained for greatness. And do you know what I saw tonight, that I've never seen before? She shook her head. Raw magical talent, combined with the courage to use it. You cast a binding spell most trained mages couldn't manage, while under attack, while maintaining concentration despite fear. Then you channeled alpha power through a fresh mate bond, something that should have burned out your circuits, but instead made the spell stronger. His hand cupped her cheek. You're not weak, Kira. You're untrained. There's a difference. The pack elders said, I was cursed, that I took my mother's strength and left myself broken. Your mother died in childbirth under a blood moon, Theron interrupted. I've read about such births in the ancient texts. They don't create weakness, Kira. They create something else, something rare. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Blood moon children are touched by old magic. Their wolves are different, because they're connected to forces most modern packs have forgotten. Kira stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying your incomplete shifts might actually be something else. A gift your pack didn't recognize, because they've lost touch with the old ways. Theron grimaced as she cleaned his wounds. Have you ever noticed other things? Moments where you sensed magic, felt things other wolves couldn't, saw patterns in nature that seemed significant. She had. Dozens of times. Dreams that came true, knowing when storms would arrive hours before they appeared, feeling the presence of magic in old places. She'd always dismissed it as imagination, coincidence. My father knew, she whispered. That's why he taught me the old tongue, why he made me memorize binding spells and protection wards. He was preparing me. He was preparing you to survive in a pack that wouldn't understand you. Theron agreed. But he's gone now, and you need a different kind of preparation. Training. Proper teaching from someone who understands old magic. And where would I find such a teacher? Theron's smile was mysterious. The royal archives contain texts your pack has never seen. Spell books and training methods from before the Great Division, when wolves and magic were inseparable. And my court mage, though she'll deny the title, is one of the few wolves left who can teach the old ways. The possibility opened up like sunrise. Training, understanding, a chance to be something more than the pack's broken omega. But reality crashed back in. Donovan will never let me leave. I'm pack, even if I'm omega. There are laws. There are also laws about mate bonds, Theron said. When the moon goddess grants a true mating, the bond supersedes pack loyalty. You're mine now, Kira. Mine to protect, mine to cherish, and mine to take to the royal territory if I choose. The pack will fight it. Donovan will. Donovan will accept it, or I'll remove him as alpha and appoint someone who understands pack law. Theron's voice hardened. I meant what I said earlier. The way your pack treats omegas is a violation of our oldest codes. Every wolf deserves protection and purpose, regardless of rank. If Silverpine Pack can't provide that, they'll answer to me. A knock at the door interrupted them. Theron's hand moved instinctively toward his absent weapon before Sienna's voice called out, "It's me, my king. I have news." "Enter." The russet-haired warrior slipped inside, her expression grim. She'd shifted back to human form and wore borrowed clothes that didn't quite fit. "We found something during our perimeter sweep. Something you need to see." "Can it wait until morning?" Theron asked, gesturing to his wounds. "I'm not exactly combat ready." "No, my king. It can't wait." Sienna's eyes flickered to Kira, then back to Theron. "We found the ritual site where the shadow beasts were summoned. It's less than a mile from here, at the border between Silverpine territory and the unclaimed lands." Kira's blood ran cold. "That close?" "Closer than close. And the magic used?" Sienna's expression was troubled. "It's fresh, hours old at most. Whoever cast the summoning spell did it tonight, probably while we were fighting for our lives in that cabin." "Show me," Theron said, attempting to stand. "You're too injured," Kira protested. "Send others." "This is assassination attempt on the Alpha King." Theron cut her off. "I need to see the ritual site personally, identify the magical signature. It's the only way to track who's responsible." He was right, but that didn't make Kira feel any better about it. She helped him stand, supporting his weight more than she probably should have been able to. The mate bond, she realized, was strengthening her beyond normal omega capacity. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." "You need someone who can read magical residue," Kira interrupted. "Someone trained in the old ways." "That's me, Theron. My father made sure I could identify spell signatures in case..." She trailed off, a horrible suspicion forming. In case someone in the pack was practicing dark magic. The three of them stared at each other as the implication sank in. "Your father knew," Theron said slowly. "He suspected someone in Silverpine Pack was dabbling in forbidden magic. That's why he taught you everything, not just to help you survive, but to give you the tools to identify the threat." "But he died 3 years ago," Kira whispered. "Killed defending the northern border from rogues." Except, her mind raced, connecting pieces she'd never thought to put together. Except what if they weren't rogues? What if someone sent them? Someone who needed my father dead before he could reveal what he knew? Sienna's hand moved to her weapon. If someone in this pack killed the former beta to hide their dark magic practice, and then that same person learned the Alpha King was traveling through their territory, they'd take the opportunity to eliminate a threat. Theron finished. Shadow beasts require significant power to summon. Whoever did this has been practicing for years, growing stronger. Your father's death bought them time to perfect their craft. Kira felt sick. Her father, murdered not by random rogues but by someone he'd lived beside, trusted, protected, and she'd been too blind, too beaten down by pack prejudice, to see the truth. "We need to identify the magical signature tonight," she said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest, "before whoever casts the spell has time to cover their tracks." Theron studied her face, seeing the determination there. "You understand what we might find? If the signature traces back to someone high-ranking in the pack, then they'll face justice," Kira said firmly. "No matter who they are. My father deserves that. You deserve that. Every wolf in this pack deserves to know there's a traitor among them." Theron's expression softened with pride, and something deeper. "You're remarkable. You know that?" Before Kira could respond, voices erupted from downstairs, shouting, the crash of furniture breaking, the snarl of wolves on the edge of violence. Sienna was out the door in an instant, Theron and Kira right behind her despite his injuries. They rushed down the stairs to find the main hall in chaos. Two of Theron's guards had shifted to wolf form, circling a thin man in his 40s, who clutched a leather satchel to his chest. Blood dripped from his nose, and his eyes darted wildly like a cornered animal. Alpha Donovan stood off to the side, his face pale. He was trying to flee. "Your guards caught him at the territory border." "Who is he?" Theron demanded. "Garrett, pack healer." Donovan's voice was hollow. "He's been with Silverpine for 20 years. Kira knew Garrett. He'd been her father's friend, had come to their home for dinner countless times. He'd treated her childhood illnesses, had stood at her father's funeral, and wept. The leather satchel, she'd seen one like it before, in her father's study. He'd shown her once, explaining that healers kept their most precious supplies in spelled bags to preserve potency. Spelled bags that could hide magical residue from casual inspection. "Open the bag," Kira said quietly. Garrett's eyes snapped to her, and she saw it. Guilt, fear, and something else. "Open it," Theron commanded, his alpha authority making it impossible to refuse. Garrett's hands shook as he unwrapped the leather flap. Inside were vials of dark liquid, bone fragments carved with runes, and a ceremonial knife still stained with fresh blood. The tools of a dark magic practitioner. The tools used to summon shadow beasts. "Garrett?" Donovan's voice cracked. "What have you done?" The healer's face twisted into something ugly. "What I had to do, what you were all too blind to see needed doing." His eyes locked on Kira with pure venom. "Your father knew. Your father knew. He caught me gathering components 3 years ago, threatened to expose me, said I'd corrupted pack magic with dark practices, but I couldn't let him ruin everything I'd built." "You killed him," Kira whispered. "You sent the rogues." "I paid them well to make it look convincing," Garrett said, his voice taking on a manic edge. "And it worked. Everyone believed the story. The brave beta, dying to protect his pack. They made him a hero." He laughed bitterly. He was a fool who couldn't see the bigger picture. "And what picture is that?" Theron's voice was deadly calm. "What could possibly justify dark magic and assassination?" "Power," Garrett shouted. "Real power. Not the scraps we're given by the royal family. Do you know what it's like, serving an alpha king who sits in his palace while packs like ours struggle? Who enforces laws that keep us weak and divided?" He pointed at Theron with shaking finger. "You're a parasite, a relic of an old system. I found others who agree. Wolves from a dozen territories who want change. Real change. And tonight was supposed to be the beginning." "You tried to kill the Alpha King to start a rebellion," Sienna said flatly. "I tried to kill the tyrant who keeps us chained," Garrett corrected. "But you survived." And now, he moved with sudden speed, smashing one of the vials on the ground. Black smoke erupted from the broken glass, spreading faster than should have been possible. Wolves scrambled back, coughing as the smoke burned their lungs. "It's a portal opening," Kira shouted. "He's trying to escape to the Void Realm." But Garrett wasn't trying to escape. He was bringing something through. A shadow beast's claw emerged from the smoke, then another, then a head with burning red eyes. This creature was larger than the ones from before, ancient and powerful, summoned with the last of Garrett's reserves. "If I die tonight," Garrett screamed over the creature's roar, "I'm taking you all with me." The shadow beast lunged toward Theron, death incarnate given form and purpose. And Kira, untrained Omega with fresh wounds and exhaustion weighing her down, did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself between the creature and her mate, calling on power she barely understood, and prayed the moon goddess was still listening. Chapter 5. The Omega's Awakening. Time slowed to a crawl as the shadow beast's claws descended toward Kira. She could see every detail, the way void energy crackled along its talons, the hunger in its burning red eyes, the certainty of her own death reflected in its crystallized darkness. But something inside her refused to accept that ending. The mate bond exploded with power as Theron's alpha strength surged through their connection. Not a gentle flow like before, but a tidal wave of raw energy that should have incinerated her circuits, should have burned her out from the inside. Instead, it ignited something. Kira felt her wolf rise within her. Not the small, incomplete creature she'd always known, but something else. Something that had been sleeping, waiting, buried beneath years of pack conditioning and self-doubt. Her blood, moon wolf. The transformation hit like lightning. No pain this time, no agonizing incompleteness. Her body shifted with fluid grace, bones and muscles reforming, fur sprouting silver white like moonlight given form. But she didn't become a small Omega wolf. She became something the pack had never seen. Her wolf form stood nearly as tall as Theron's, with fur that seemed to glow with its own internal light. Silver markings spiraled across her coat, ancient runes that predated modern pack society, symbols of the old magic flowing through her veins. The shadow beast's claws met a barrier of pure silver light that erupted from Kira's body. The creature shrieked as the light burned its void flesh like acid. "Impossible." Garrett's voice was a strangled whisper. "Blood moon children can't access their full power without proper training. You should be..." Kira didn't let him finish. She moved with speed that shocked even her, closing the distance to the shadow beast in a heartbeat. Her jaws clamped down on the creature's throat, not with physical teeth alone, but with light-wreathed fangs that could tear void energy itself. The shadow beast dissolved like smoke and wind, its essence banished back to the void realm with a final, fading shriek. The pack house erupted in chaos. Wolves backed away from Kira, their eyes wide with shock, and something close to fear. Even Theron's guards looked uncertain, their battle-ready stances wavering. Because Kira wasn't just an Omega anymore. She was something the legends spoke of, but modern packs thought extinct. A moon-blessed. A wolf born under blood moon, with the power to channel pure lunar magic, the rarest gift the moon goddess could bestow. Kira. Theron's voice in her mind was steady, grounding. "Come back to me. Don't let the power overwhelm you." She turned to look at him. Her mate, wounded but standing tall, golden eyes full of pride rather than fear. The sight of him anchored her, pulled her back from the edge of power that threatened to consume rational thought. Kira shifted back to human form, the transformation smooth and natural now that her true wolf had awakened. She stood naked in the center of the pack house, silver markings still glowing faintly on her skin, and met Alpha Donovan's shocked gaze without flinching. "Garrett," she said calmly, "tried to murder the Alpha King, practiced forbidden dark magic, and confessed to killing my father. I believe that warrants the old punishment. Blood for blood." Her voice carried authority it had never held before. The awakening of her true wolf had changed more than just her shift. It had changed her fundamental nature. She wasn't Omega anymore. The pack hierarchy recognized it instinctively, wolves dropping their eyes in submission, even as their minds struggled to process what they'd witnessed. Garrett scrambled backward, his earlier bravado evaporating. "You can't. I have rights. Pack law says." "Pack law says traitors die," Donovan said quietly. His face had gone gray, shock giving way to horrified understanding. 20 years. 20 years you've been in my pack, and you were practicing dark magic the entire time. How many others, Garrett? How many other wolves are part of your rebellion?" More than you can imagine, Garrett spat. Wolves in every territory who are sick of bowing to. Theron moved with alpha speed, his hand wrapping around Garrett's throat despite his injuries. Names? Now. Or I'll make your death last days instead of seconds. The command in his voice was absolute. Garrett's resistance crumbled, words spilling out like water through a broken dam. Names, territories, meeting places, a conspiracy that stretched across the kingdom. Wolves who'd grown disillusioned with royal rule and sought to overthrow the old order. Sienna recorded everything, her expression growing darker with each revelation. This wasn't just an assassination attempt, it was the beginning of civil war. When Garrett finally fell silent, spent and trembling, Theron released him carelessly. Sienna, have him secured in silver chains. I want him alive long enough to verify his information. Then, his golden eyes went cold. Then we'll discuss appropriate punishment. 2 guards dragged Garrett away, the healer's screams echoing through the pack house until a door slammed shut, muffling the sound. Theron turned to Donovan. Your pack harbored a traitor for 20 years, one who murdered your beta and attempted to assassinate your king. That's either criminal negligence or complicity. Which is it? Negligence, Donovan said immediately, though shame colored his voice. I swear on my alpha honor, I had no knowledge of Garrett's activities. If I had known, you would have what? Stopped him? Reported him? Theron's voice was harsh. Or would you have looked the other way? Like you looked the other way while an Omega was cast aside and abused. Like you looked the other way while a wolf with obvious magical talent was labeled defective and denied proper training. Donovan flinched. The pack elders are idiots who wouldn't recognize true power if it bit them. Theron finished. He gestured to Kira, who'd been given a robe by one of the pack females. She's moon-blessed. Donovan, do you understand what that means? Your pack had one of the rarest magical gifts in existence, and you treated her like trash. You let her father be murdered by someone he was trying to expose, and you never questioned it. You failed as an alpha in every way that matters. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Every wolf present understood the implication. Theron was building a case for Donovan's removal from power. What would you have me do? Donovan asked quietly. I can't undo the past. I can't bring back her father or erase years of mistreatment. No, Theron agreed, but you can start making amends, beginning with a complete restructuring of how this pack treats Omegas and wolves with magical gifts. He moved to stand beside Kira, his hand finding hers. And you can formally acknowledge Kira as my mate and future queen, with all the respect and honor that entails. The title hit Kira like a physical blow. Queen, not just mate, but queen, ruler of all wolf territories, second only to the Alpha King himself. I can't, she whispered. I don't know how to. You defeated shadow beasts twice in one night, Theron reminded her gently. You cast binding spells, and channeled alpha power, and awakened your true wolf under pressure that would break most trained warriors. If that's not queen material, I don't know what is. But the other territories, the other packs, they'll never accept an Omega as queen. They'll accept a moon-blessed who proved herself in combat, Sienna said, speaking up from her position near the door. The old stories say moon-blessed wolves were advisors to kings, powerful mages who could turn the tide of wars. If word spreads about what you did tonight, and it will spread, you'll be a legend before the week is out. Kira looked around the pack house, seeing the faces of wolves who'd tormented her, ignored her, treated her as less than nothing. Sylvia stood in the corner, her expression twisted with jealousy and disbelief. Other pack members whispered among themselves, shock and confusion warring with reluctant respect. This was her pack, her home, the place where she'd been broken down and rebuilt 1,000 times. And she was about to leave it all behind. I accept, she said clearly, her voice carrying through the hall. I accept the mate bond, with Theron Blackwood, Alpha King of all territories, and I formally renounce my membership in Silver Pine Pack, to join the royal household. The words were ritual, binding. The moment she spoke them, Kira felt the pack bond, already weak from years of neglect, snap completely. The absence was immediate and jarring, like losing a limb she'd forgotten she had. But in its place, something stronger formed. The mate bond with Theron solidified, becoming an unbreakable chain of power and emotion that tied them together. And beyond that, she felt the faint stirrings of the royal pack bond, thousands of wolves across the kingdom, all connected through their king. Donovan closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. The Silver Pine Pack acknowledges your departure and wishes you well in your new position. The formal words sounded hollow, forced. You will always have the right to visit these lands, as is custom for wolves who leave to join their mates. Generous, Theron said dryly. Now, about the restructuring I mentioned. By royal decree effective immediately, no pack under my rule may exile or segregate Omegas. All wolves, regardless of rank, must be given access to pack resources, communal spaces, and protection. Any alpha found violating this decree will be removed from power. Are we clear? That will cause problems, Donovan said carefully. The hierarchies have been established for generations. Many packs won't. Many packs will adapt or find new leadership. Theron interrupted. This isn't a request, Donovan. It's a command from your king. And if I discover that any pack is harboring dark magic practitioners, using it as cover while they oppress their weaker members, I will personally ensure every wolf involved faces consequences. The threat was clear. Donovan nodded stiffly. Good. Theron turned to Sienna. Send messengers to the royal territory. I want our fastest riders carrying word of the conspiracy, and orders to begin investigating the wolves Garrett named. Every pack he mentioned needs to be watched carefully. Already done, my king, Sienna said. I sent birds while you were questioning him. We should have responses by dawn. Efficient as always. Theron nodded approval, then swayed slightly. The adrenaline that had been keeping him upright was fading, and his wounds were taking their toll. You need rest, Kira said firmly. Real rest, not just standing around making royal decrees while you bleed. She's right, Sienna agreed. You're in no shape to continue, my king. Let us handle the immediate security concerns while you recover. Theron looked like he wanted to argue, but his body betrayed him with another sway. Fine, but I want guards posted in shifts around our room. No one enters without my explicit permission. Garrett may have given us names, but we don't know how deep this conspiracy runs. Someone in this very pack house could be a traitor. The pack members shifted uncomfortably at the accusation, but no one could deny the possibility. If Garrett had hidden his activities for 20 years, who else might be concealing dark secrets? Kira helped Theron back up the stairs to their room, his weight heavy against her side. The mate bond let her support more than she should have been able to, but it was still a struggle. By the time they reached the bed, both were exhausted. That was well done, Theron said, as she helped him lie down, the formal renunciation. I know it wasn't easy. It was the easiest thing I've ever done, Kira admitted. She began checking his wounds again, relieved to see the bleeding had mostly stopped. This pack stopped being home a long time ago. They just didn't realize I'd stopped considering myself one of them. Still, walking away from everything you've known, Theron caught her hand. I want you to understand what you're getting into. Being queen isn't just a title, it's responsibility, danger, politics, and constant scrutiny. Every pack will be watching you, judging you, waiting for you to fail. Sounds familiar, Kira said wryly. I've been watched, judged, and expected to fail my entire life. At least now I'll have the power to prove them wrong. Theron's smile was tired but genuine. You're going to be magnificent. I can already see it. Or, I'll be a complete disaster. Then we'll be disasters together. He pulled her down beside him on the bed. Rest with me. We both need sleep before dawn. Kira hesitated. They were mates, yes, but they'd known each other less than 12 hours. Sleeping beside him felt intimate in ways that scared her. As if sensing her thoughts, Theron said gently, I'm not expecting anything beyond sleep, Kira. The mating can wait until you're ready, Until we both are. For now, I just want my mate beside me. Is that acceptable? She nodded, settling carefully next to him. The bed was large enough that they didn't have to touch, but the mate bond hummed with contentment at their proximity. Tell me about the royal territory, Kira said quietly. What's it like? Beautiful, Theron said, his eyes already drifting closed. Mountains and forests, a palace built from white stone that glows under moonlight, training grounds where warriors spar, libraries filled with ancient texts, gardens where the court mage grows magical herbs. His voice grew softer. You'll love the archives. Thousands of books about the old ways, spells and rituals that haven't been practiced in centuries. Everything your father wanted you to learn, and more. The image he painted was so different from her cold cabin, her isolation, her small existence in Silverpine Pack. It sounds like a fairy tale. It's real, and it's yours now. Our home. Theron's breathing was evening out, sleep claiming him despite his efforts to stay awake. Promise me something, Kira. What? Promise you won't doubt yourself. Whatever comes, whatever challenges we face, remember tonight. Remember that you're powerful, brave, and exactly who you're meant to be. His eyes opened briefly, golden and intense. Promise me. I promise, Kira whispered. Satisfied, Theron finally surrendered to sleep. His breathing deepened, his body relaxing despite the injuries. Kira lay beside him, her mind racing. So much had changed in such a short time. This morning she'd been nothing, an Omega living in isolation, existing on the Pack's sufferance. Now she was the Alpha King's mate, a moon-blessed wolf with power she barely understood, future queen of all territories. The responsibility should have terrified her, part of her expected panic, doubt, the familiar voice of inadequacy that had haunted her for years. But instead she felt something else. Certainty. Her father had prepared her for this, even if he hadn't known exactly what this would be. The moon goddess had blessed her with rare gifts, and Theron, her mate, her king, believed in her absolutely. Maybe it was time she started believing in herself. Kira closed her eyes and let sleep claim her, the mate bond wrapping around them both, like a protective cocoon. Outside their room, Sienna posted guards and prepared for whatever dawn would bring. In the dungeon, Garrett screamed threats and promises of revenge that no one believed. And somewhere in the darkness beyond Silverpine territory, other conspirators learned that their assassination attempt had failed and began planning their next move. The game had just begun. Chapter 6. Dawn's Reckoning. Dawn broke cold and merciless over Silverpine territory. Kira woke to find Theron already awake, his golden eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. The mate bond hummed between them, stronger now after a night's rest, singing with emotions she wasn't ready to name. How long have you been watching me? She asked. Long enough to confirm you're real. His hand brushed a strand of silver-white hair from her face, hair that had darkened overnight, the physical manifestation of her awakened power. I was half convinced I'd dreamed it all. The Omega who saved my life, defeated shadow beasts, and turned out to be moon-blessed. If it's a dream, we're both still sleeping. Kira sat up, suddenly aware of how intimate this was, sharing a bed with the Alpha King, his scent surrounding her, the warmth of his body close enough to feel. Your wounds. Let me check them. She unwrapped the bandages carefully, relieved to find the void poison's effects had lessened overnight. The wounds were still serious, but his alpha healing was finally working properly. By tonight, they'd be mostly closed. You are a natural healer, Theron observed. Another gift your pack wasted. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sienna's voice called out, My king, the pack is assembled as ordered, and we've received responses from the royal territory. The news isn't good. Theron's expression hardened. Enter. Sienna slipped inside, her face grim. She handed Theron a sealed letter bearing the royal crest. He read quickly, his jaw clenching with each line. 3 of the wolves Garrett named have fled their territories, he said finally. 2 others were found dead. murdered before they could be questioned. And the conspiracy runs deeper than we thought. My advisors estimate at least 50 wolves are involved, possibly more. 50 wolves willing to commit treason, Kiera said quietly. That's enough to start a war. It's enough to destabilize the kingdom, Theron corrected. If they coordinate attacks across multiple territories simultaneously, they could create chaos that would take years to resolve. Wolves would die, packs would fracture, everything we've built over centuries could collapse. The weight of it settled over the room like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about an assassination attempt anymore. It was about the future of their entire society. What do we do? Sienna asked. We show strength, Theron said firmly. We demonstrate that attacks on the crown will not be tolerated, that conspirators will face absolute justice, and that the Alpha King cannot be so easily killed. He stood, wincing slightly, but hiding it well. Assemble the pack in the main hall. It's time for a very public display. 20 minutes later, every wolf in Silverpine pack crowded into the great hall. Theron's guards lined the walls, a silent reminder of the king's power. And at the center of it all, Theron stood on the raised platform, where Alpha Donovan normally held court, a deliberate symbolic choice. Kiera stood at his right hand, wearing borrowed clothes that didn't quite fit, but carrying herself with newfound confidence. Her silver-white hair gleamed in the morning light, and the faint glow of runic markings still visible on her skin marked her as something extraordinary. The pack stared, some with awe, others with lingering resentment, many with confusion about how their Omega had transformed overnight into something powerful. Bring the prisoner, Theron commanded. 2 guards dragged Garrett forward. The healer looked broken, his earlier defiance replaced by hollow-eyed terror. Silver chains bound his wrists and ankles, metal that burned wolf-kind, preventing any possibility of shift or escape. Garrett of Silverpine Pack, Theron's voice rang through the hall with alpha authority. You stand accused of practicing dark magic, consorting with void creatures, murdering a pack beta, and attempting to assassinate your Alpha King. Do you deny these charges? Garrett's mouth worked soundlessly. Finally he whispered, No. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I did what I believed was right. Garrett's voice grew stronger, fed by fanaticism rather than courage. You're a tyrant, Blackwood. You and your family have held power for too long, making rules that keep the rest of us weak. The old order is dying, whether you accept it or not. And there are more like me, wolves who'll finish what I started. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear, shock, some expressions Kiera couldn't quite read. Were there others here? Other conspirators Garrett hadn't named? The old order, Theron said coldly, was built on principles you've forgotten. Unity, protection of the weak, justice for all wolves regardless of rank. His gaze swept the assembled pack. You speak of tyranny, while practicing the darkest magic, summoning creatures that kill indiscriminately, and murdering good wolves who stood in your way. If that's your vision of freedom, I want no part of it. He turned to address the entire hall. Let this serve as warning to any who share Garrett's beliefs. Treason will not be tolerated. Dark magic will not be permitted. And those who threaten the kingdom, who endanger innocent wolves in pursuit of power, will face the ultimate punishment. Theron's claws extended, gleaming silver in the light. The ancient way, the old punishment. Alpha justice, swift and absolute. Wait. A voice from the crowd. Sylvia pushed forward, her face pale but determined. You can't just kill him without trial. Pack law requires. Pack law, Theron interrupted, grants the Alpha King absolute authority in cases of treason. Garrett confessed. His guilt is not in question. What remains is only punishment. But others might be involved, Sylvia pressed. If you kill him now, we lose the chance to find them all. Let him live long enough to what? Kiera spoke up, surprising herself. To spread more poison, to coordinate with his fellow conspirators, to arrange another assassination attempt? She met Sylvia's eyes steadily. Or are you concerned because you know something about who else might be involved? Sylvia's face flushed red. How dare you accuse me? I've done nothing but serve this pack faithfully. You've done nothing but scheme for power and treat those beneath you with cruelty, Kira said quietly. I don't think you're part of Garrett's conspiracy, but I think you understand his hunger for more than you've been given, and that makes you dangerous in different ways. The accusation hung in the air. Sylvia looked to her father, to Alpha Donovan, expecting defense, but Donovan remained silent, his expression troubled. Enough, Theron said. Garrett's fate is sealed. What you should be asking, Sylvia, is what happens to this pack after his execution, because right now, I'm questioning whether Silverpine has the leadership it needs. Donovan stepped forward, his alpha pride warring with pragmatic fear. My king, I understand your concerns about my leadership, but removing me would create instability at a time when we can least afford it. Let me prove Silverpine's loyalty. Let me root out any remaining conspirators, and restore honor to this pack. It was a reasonable request, a political solution that avoided immediate confrontation. But Kira could see something in Theron's eyes, doubt about whether Donovan was capable of the change required. Could an alpha who'd allowed such corruption and mistreatment truly reform? You have 1 month, Theron said finally. 30 days to demonstrate real change. Every Omega in this pack will be integrated fully into pack life, communal housing, shared meals, equal protection. Any wolf showing magical talent will be evaluated properly, not dismissed as defective, and you will personally investigate every pack member to ensure no other conspirators remain hidden. And if I fail? Donovan asked. Then I'll appoint a new alpha, someone who understands that true strength comes from unity, not hierarchy. Theron's gaze swept the hall again. That applies to every pack in my kingdom. The old ways, the cruel ways, end now. We evolve, or we die. The words carried weight beyond their immediate meaning. This was a turning point, Kira realized. A moment when the Alpha King was drawing a line and demanding his subjects choose which side they stood on. Now, Theron said, turning back to Garrett, justice. What happened next was swift and brutal. Theron's claws found Garrett's throat before the healer could speak another word. The execution was clean, professional, designed to minimize suffering while making the consequences of treason absolutely clear. Garrett's body fell. The silver chains clinked against stone, and the great hall remained silent, every wolf processing what they'd witnessed. Let this be remembered, Theron said quietly. Betray the kingdom, and you face alpha justice. But serve faithfully regardless of your rank or power, and you'll find protection, purpose, and honor. The choice is yours. He stepped down from the platform, Kira following. They walked through the assembled pack, wolves parting before them like water. Some bowed, others simply stared, overwhelmed by everything that had transpired. Outside, the sun had risen fully, painting the snow golden. Theron's remaining guards were already preparing for departure, horses saddled, supplies packed, ready to escort their king home. We're leaving? Kira asked. We are, Theron confirmed. I've done what needed doing here. Now we need to address the larger conspiracy from a position of strength. The royal territory is the safest place for us while this plays out. Your wounds will heal on the journey. He squeezed her hand. I've survived worse with less, and I'll have you beside me. That makes all the difference. Sienna approached, leading 2 horses. Everything's ready, my king. We can reach the border by nightfall if we press hard. Kira looked back at the pack house, at Silverpine territory, the only home she'd ever known. Part of her expected to feel sadness, regret, some attachment to what she was leaving behind. But all she felt was relief, and anticipation for what came next. I'm ready, she said. They mounted up, Theron helping her into the saddle despite his wounds. The horse beneath her was magnificent, a war-trained stallion that responded to the lightest touch. Nothing like the old plow horses she'd occasionally ridden in the pack. One more thing, Theron said. He removed a silver chain from around his neck, a pendant bearing the royal crest. He placed it carefully around Kira's neck, the metal warm from his body heat. This marks you as mine, as queen, Anyone who sees it will know to show you proper respect, or answer to me personally." The pendant settled against her chest, surprisingly heavy, the weight of responsibility made tangible. They rode out as the sun climbed higher, 15 wolves and their king leaving Silverpine territory behind. Kira didn't look back. There was nothing behind her worth seeing, only the future mattered now. And what a future it promised to be. The Alpha King's mate, a moon-blessed wolf, future queen of all territories. She'd gone from nothing to everything in the span of a single night. The pack that had broken her down had inadvertently prepared her for greatness. Beside her, Theron caught her eye and smiled, not the cold alpha smile he showed others, but something warm and genuine meant only for her. "Ready for your new life?" he asked. Kira smiled back, feeling her wolf stir contentedly within her chest. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it yet." They rode toward the border, toward safety, toward home. Behind them, in Silverpine territory, Alpha Donovan watched them go and wondered if he could truly change enough to keep his position. And in dark corners across the kingdom, conspirators learned their first attempt had failed, and began planning something far worse. The storm was coming, but for now, in this moment, Kira let herself feel something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Chapter 7. The Royal Territory. The journey to the Royal Territory took 3 days. 3 days of hard riding, camping under the stars, and Kira learning what it meant to be part of Theron's inner circle. The guards who'd seemed so intimidating in her cabin were actually warm, funny, fiercely loyal wolves who told stories around campfires and treated her with genuine respect. Sienna, the russet-haired warrior, became something unexpected, a friend. "You're handling this remarkably well," Sienna said on the second night, as they sat together while Theron discussed strategy with his other guards. "Most wolves would be overwhelmed by everything that's happened." "I'm terrified," Kira admitted. "I just hide it better than you'd think." Sienna laughed. "That's the secret. Every warrior learns eventually. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs doing despite the fear." She studied Kira thoughtfully. "The king chose well. You're going to make a fine queen." "I don't know how to be a queen. None of us knew how to be what we became. We learned." Sienna gestured to the other guards. "Malik over there was a street orphan before Theron found him. Darius was banished from his birth pack for being too aggressive, and I was a rogue for 5 years after my pack was slaughtered. Theron gave us all purpose, training and family. He'll do the same for you." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they highlighted how much Kira still had to learn, how far she had to go before she'd be truly ready. That night, she and Theron shared a tent, proper this time, with 2 bedrolls and enough space to maintain respectful distance. The mate bond hummed between them, wanting closeness but patient enough to wait. "Tell me about the court mage," Kira said into the darkness. "The one who can teach me about old magic." Theron was quiet for a moment. "Her name is Alara. She's been with the royal household for 40 years, though she looks barely 30. Magic does that sometimes. Slows aging for those who master it. She's brilliant, difficult, and completely uninterested in politics or social niceties." "Sounds delightful." "She is, actually. Once you earn her respect." Theron shifted in his bedroll. "She lost her own mate decades ago to a magical accident. Training students is how she processes grief, passing on knowledge so others don't make the same mistakes." Kira heard the weight behind his words. "What happened?" "Her mate tried casting a spell beyond his capacity. The magic consumed him from the inside, burned him out in seconds. Alara was holding his hand when it happened." Theron's voice was soft. "She blames herself for not teaching him properly, for assuming he understood the risks. So now she's ruthlessly thorough with anyone she trains." "That's tragic." "It's reality. Magic is power, and power without proper training is lethal." He paused. "That's why I want you working with Alara immediately. Your awakening gave you access to incredible abilities, but you don't have the foundation yet. One wrong spell, one moment of overconfidence. I could end up like her mate. Kira finished quietly. I understand. Good. Theron's hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers lacing together. Because I just found you, Kira. I'm not ready to lose you to magical backlash or any other preventable tragedy. The vulnerability in his voice made her chest tight. This powerful alpha king, feared and respected across territories, was admitting fear. For her. You won't lose me, she promised. I'll train properly, learn control, do whatever it takes. That's my queen, Theron murmured, and Kira felt the mate bond warm with his satisfaction. They crossed into royal territory on the afternoon of the third day. The difference was immediately apparent. Where Silver Pine had been harsh wilderness and scattered settlements, the royal lands were cultivated beauty, forests managed with care, roads maintained properly, villages that looked prosperous rather than barely surviving, and everywhere they rode, wolves stopped to bow as their king passed. They love you, Kira observed. They trust me, Theron corrected. There's a difference. Love is easy to gain, and easy to lose. Trust must be earned through consistent action over years. He gestured to a group of children playing near the road, their laughter bright and carefree. These wolves know I'll protect them, provide for them, ensure their packs are treated fairly. That's worth more than love. The palace appeared as they crested a final hill, white stone that seemed to glow in the afternoon sun, towers reaching toward the sky, like prayers made architecture. Gardens surrounded it, even in late autumn, showing signs of careful cultivation. And beyond it all, mountains rose like ancient guardians, their peaks still snow-capped, despite the season. It was the most beautiful thing Kira had ever seen. Home, Theron said simply, and she heard the satisfaction in his voice. They rode through gates that swung open at their approach, into a courtyard filled with wolves waiting to greet their king. Servants rushed forward to take horses. Guards snapped to attention, and from the palace doors emerged an older woman with silver hair and eyes like winter storms. About time you returned, the woman said, her voice carrying authority despite her small stature. 3 days overdue, 16 messengers sent ahead, with progressively more alarming news, and you stroll in like you've been on a leisurely vacation. Her gaze locked on Kira, and this must be the Omega who's turned the kingdom upside down. Alara, Theron said warnly, meet Kira, my mate and your new student. Moon-blessed, Alara said, moving closer to study Kira with unsettling intensity. I can see it in your aura, lunar magic singing just beneath your skin. Awakened recently, chaotically, without proper preparation. She circled Kira like a predator assessing prey. You're a disaster waiting to happen, girl. One wrong spell, and you'll immolate everyone within 100 feet. Ilara, Theron's voice carried warning. Don't Ilara's me. I'm stating facts. The court mage stopped in front of Kira, her expression softening slightly. But you're also the most promising magical talent I've seen in decades. Raw power combined with genuine courage, rare combination. We'll start your training tomorrow at dawn. Don't be late. Yes, ma'am, Kira managed. Alara's lips twitched with something that might have been approval. Then she turned to Theron. Your council is demanding immediate audience. The conspiracy Garrett revealed has them in a panic. Half want to mobilize the army. The other half want to negotiate. It's chaos. Let them wait, Theron said firmly. I need to get Kira settled first, ensure she's comfortable. I'll be fine, Kira interrupted. You have kingdom business to attend to. I can find my way. Theron looked torn between duty and desire. The mate bond pulled him toward Kira, wanting to stay close, but his responsibilities as king demanded immediate attention. Go, Kira said gently. I'm not going anywhere. We have all the time in the world now. He nodded reluctantly, then leaned in to press a kiss to her forehead, a gesture of affection and claiming that made several nearby servants gasp. Alara, show her to the queen's chambers. Make sure she has everything she needs. Obviously, Alara said dryly. Theron strode toward the palace, guards falling in around him, the weight of kingship settling back onto his shoulders with visible effort. Alara watched him go, then turned to Kira. Come, let's get you settled before you collapse from exhaustion. 3 days of hard riding when you're not used to it, you must be ready to drop. She was, actually. Kira followed Alara through palace corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past tapestries and portraits and windows that overlooked gardens still showing autumn color. The queen's chambers were larger than her entire cabin had been. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in silks that looked impossibly soft. Windows overlooked the mountains, letting in natural light that made everything glow, and everywhere were small luxuries, plush rugs, comfortable chairs, a writing desk with fresh paper and ink. The king's chambers connect through that door, Alara said, pointing, though given your mate bond is still new. I'm guessing you're not ready for that level of intimacy yet. At Kira's startled expression, she smiled. I'm old girl, not dead. I understand how these things work. Take your time. Theron's waited this long for a mate. He can wait a bit longer for the mating to be completed properly. Thank you, Kira said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow your real work begins. Alara moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. There will be wolves here, nobles, courtiers, ambitious pack leaders, who'll resent you. An Omega becoming queen challenges everything they believe about hierarchy and worth. They'll test you, push boundaries, look for weaknesses. I'm used to that, Kira said. I'm sure you are. But this is different. Silverpine Pack's cruelty was blunt, obvious. Court politics are subtle, poisonous, designed to make you doubt yourself from the inside out. Alara's winter storm eyes held Kira's. Don't let them. You defeated shadow beasts and saved the Alpha King. You're moon-blessed with power most wolves can only dream about. Remember that when some perfumed noble tries to make you feel small. With that, she left, closing the door softly behind her. Kira stood alone in the queen's chambers, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined, and let the reality of her situation finally sink in. She was here, actually here, in the royal palace, wearing the king's pendant, preparing to become queen of all territories. Part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Part of her wanted to cry from overwhelming emotion. Instead, she walked to the window and looked out at the mountains, at the territory spread below, at the world that was now hers to help protect and lead. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called. A young woman entered, a servant, based on her simple dress, carrying folded clothes. Begging your pardon, my lady, but the king sent these, said you'd need proper attire for tonight's dinner. Tonight's dinner? With the council, my lady. The king wants you there, by his side. The servant laid out the clothes carefully. A dress in deep blue that would complement Kira's silver white hair, elegant but practical. He said to tell you it's not optional. You're queen now, whether the council likes it or not, and they need to see you as such. Kira's stomach nodded. Meeting the council, being judged by the most powerful wolves in the kingdom, proving herself worthy when she still barely understood what that meant. When is dinner? She asked. 2 hours, my lady. I can help you dress, if you'd like. Do your hair, maybe show you how court ladies present themselves. The offer was kind. The servant's expression showed genuine desire to help, rather than any condescension. That would be wonderful, Kira said gratefully. I'm new to all of this. Everyone's new once, my lady. The servant smiled. My name's Mira. I'll be your personal attendant, if that pleases you. The king assigned me this morning, personal attendant. Another piece of her new reality sliding into place. It pleases me very much, Mira. Thank you. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Mira helped her bathe, dress, and styled her silver white hair into something that looked elegant rather than wild. She explained basic court etiquette: where to sit, how to address council members, when to speak, and when to remain silent. Most importantly, Mira said, fastening the king's pendant, so it was displayed prominently. Remember, you're his mate, his equal. You don't bow to anyone except him, and even that's optional in private. She stepped back, admiring her work. Perfect. You look like a queen, my lady. Kiera studied herself in the mirror, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the timid Omega in worn clothes. In her place stood someone regal, powerful, ready to face whatever challenges came next. A knock at the connecting door. Theron's voice called, "Kiera, may I enter?" "Yes," she said. He stepped through, and his expression when he saw her made all of Mira's efforts worthwhile. Wonder, pride, and heat that made the mate bond flare with sudden intensity. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "Mira deserves the credit." "I really don't, my lady," Mira said quickly. "I just helped reveal what was already there." She curtsied and slipped out, giving them privacy. Theron crossed to Kiera, taking her hands in his. "Are you ready for this? The council can be difficult, especially when confronted with change they didn't expect." "I'm terrified," Kiera admitted. "But I'm ready. I think that's all anyone can ask." He pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Remember, you're not facing them alone. I'll be beside you the entire time. And if anyone shows disrespect, they'll answer to me immediately. That might make things worse, or it might teach them proper manners." Theron's smile was sharp. "Either way, they'll learn. You're my mate, my queen, and I won't tolerate anyone treating you as less than you are." The protection, the absolute certainty in his voice, made Kiera's chest warm. This was what it meant to have a mate, someone who stood beside you, who defended you, who believed in you even when you struggled to believe in yourself. "Let's go," she said. "Before I lose my nerve." They walked through the palace corridors together, Theron's hand at the small of her back, toward the council chambers and whatever judgment awaited. The game of politics was about to begin, and Kiera was determined to prove she could play. Chapter 8. The Council's Test. The council chamber was a circular room with a domed ceiling painted to resemble the night sky. 12 chairs surrounded an enormous table carved from a single piece of ancient oak, each seat occupied by a wolf whose power and influence was written in their bearing. They all turned as Theron and Kiera entered. The silence was deafening. Kiera felt their eyes on her, assessing, judging, some openly hostile. These were alphas and high-ranking wolves who'd served the crown for decades, and she was an Omega who'd been nothing 3 days ago. "Council," Theron said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "May I present Kiera, my mate, and your future queen?" He guided her to the seat at his right hand, the queen's chair, left empty since his mother's death 10 years prior. The symbolism was unmistakable. A gray-haired man at the far end of the table spoke first. "Your Majesty, with respect, this is highly irregular. The queen's position traditionally requires a mate bond blessed by the moon goddess," Theron interrupted. "Which Kiera and I share. Or are you questioning the goddess's judgment, Chancellor Aldrich?" The rebuke was sharp. Aldrich's jaw clenched. "Of course not, Your Majesty. I simply meant that traditionally, the future queen is introduced to council gradually, with time for proper vetting, and traditional circumstances don't involve assassination attempts and kingdom-wide conspiracies," Theron said coldly. "We're past the luxury of gradual introductions. Kiera is my mate. She will be queen. And this council will show her the respect her position demands. Are we clear?" The words brooked no argument. Several council members nodded immediately. Others looked less convinced but weren't foolish enough to openly object. A woman with sharp features and calculating eyes spoke next. "None of us question the mate bond, Your Majesty. However, Lady Kiera's background raises legitimate concerns. She comes from a minor pack, has no experience with court politics or interterritorial negotiations, and her Omega status." "Former Omega status," Kiera interrupted, surprising herself. All eyes swung to her. "I awakened as Moon Blessed 3 nights ago. The Omega designation no longer applies." The woman's eyes widened. "Moon Blessed? Those are legends. No one's seen a true Moon-Blessed wolf in over a century." "Then you're overdue," Kiera said, channeling Alara's matter-of-fact tone. "I cast binding spells that banished shadow beasts back to the Void Realm. I channeled the Alpha King's power through our mate bond without burning out, and I bear the runic markings that every ancient text describes as proof of lunar blessing. She met the woman's gaze steadily. My background may be humble, but my abilities are not. Silence. Then Chancellor Aldrich leaned forward, his expression shifting from skepticism to keen interest. You truly cast binding spells? In the old tongue? My father taught me. He believed the ancient ways still had value, even when the pack dismissed them as useless knowledge. Your father was right, a new voice said. An elderly man at the table's far end, so old his hair was pure white and his face weathered with age. I'm Elder Rowan, keeper of the royal archives. I've studied the old texts my entire life, and I can count on one hand the number of living wolves who can still speak the ancient tongue fluently. If you truly have that knowledge, combined with moon-blessed power, he trailed off, shaking his head in wonder. The kingdom hasn't seen such a combination since the founding wars, which is precisely why some will target her, the sharp-featured woman said. She turned to Kiera, her expression less hostile now. I'm Lady Verena, head of intelligence operations. My job is protecting the crown from threats. And right now, you're a walking target. Moon-blessed wolves were hunted to near extinction during the Purge Wars, because their power threatened those who wanted dominance through strength alone. If word spreads about what you are, and it will spread, every conspirator in the kingdom will want you dead. The words sent ice through Kiera's veins. Because I'm a threat? Because you're a symbol, Verena corrected. You prove that power doesn't come solely from traditional hierarchy. An Omega becoming moon-blessed, defeating shadow beasts, marrying the Alpha King, it challenges everything the conspirators believe about natural order. They'll see you as the embodiment of change they're trying to prevent. Then let them come, Theron said, his voice hard. Kiera has me, my guards, and the full protection of the crown. Anyone who tries to harm her will face consequences that make Garrett's execution look merciful. Spoken like a mate rather than a king, Aldrich said carefully. Your Majesty, we understand the mate bond's influence. But nothing, Theron snapped. I'm both mate and king, and I'm capable of balancing those roles. Kiera is an asset to this kingdom, not a liability. Her magical abilities alone make her invaluable. Add her intelligence, courage, and the fact that she saved my life twice, and anyone questioning her worth reveals their own lack of judgment. The council shifted uncomfortably. Clearly, they'd expected to press harder against Kiera's ascension, but Theron was giving them no room to maneuver. Perhaps, Elder Rowan said diplomatically, we should focus on immediate concerns. Your Majesty, the conspiracy Garrett revealed, have we made progress, identifying other participants? Theron's expression remained hard, but he nodded. Verena, report. Lady Verena pulled out a folder thick with documents. We've confirmed connections to 17 different packs across 8 territories. The conspiracy is larger and better organized than we initially thought. They call themselves the Shadow Pact, ironic given their use of shadow beasts, and they've been recruiting for at least 5 years. 5 years? Theron's knuckles went white, gripping his chair. How did they operate under our noses for 5 years? By targeting discontented wolves carefully, those passed over for promotions, packs struggling with resources, ambitious alphas who felt constrained by royal law. Verena's voice was clinical, professional. They promised power, autonomy, and freedom from oppressive royal control. For wolves already feeling marginalized, it was an appealing message. They're terrorists, Aldrich said flatly. Dressing up treason in noble language doesn't change what they are. Agreed, Verena said. But calling them terrorists doesn't help us stop them. We need to understand their appeal if we want to dismantle the organization. What do they want? Kiera asked. Beyond killing the king, what's their end goal? All eyes turned to her again, but this time with something approaching respect. It was a good question, one that cut to the heart of the issue. Decentralization, Verena said. They want to dissolve the unified kingdom and return to independent territories. No Alpha King, no royal law, no central authority. Each pack governing itself however it sees fit. That would be chaos, Elder Rowan said. Without unified law, territories would go to war over resources, old grudges would reignite, and the weak would suffer. It took centuries of bloodshed to build the current system. They don't care about historical lessons, Verena said. They think they can do better. That local governance will be more responsive, more fair, more aligned with natural wolf instincts. Natural wolf instincts, Theron repeated bitterly, by which they mean the strong dominating the weak without consequence. That's what we had before centralized rule, and it nearly destroyed us. Kiera thought of Silverpine Pack, of how she'd been treated, of Omegas living in isolation, while the strong enjoyed comfort and community. They want to go back to a system where rank is everything and compassion is weakness. Precisely, Verena said. And that's why you're such a threat to them. You're living proof that the old hierarchies don't work. An Omega who became powerful, who earned the Alpha King's respect through merit rather than birth rank. You invalidate their entire philosophy. The weight of that settled over Kiera. She wasn't just a target because of her relationship with Theron. She was a target because of what she represented: change, possibility, the idea that wolves could be more than what they were born to be. So what do we do? She asked. We show strength, Theron said. We demonstrate that the crown cannot be overthrown, that conspirators will be caught and punished, and that the kingdom is stable despite their efforts. And we make Kiera visible, Verena added. At Theron's sharp look, she continued. I know it's risky, but hiding her suggests shame or weakness. If we present her publicly as your mate and future queen, if we show the kingdom that a moon-blessed wolf stands beside the Alpha King, it sends a powerful message about unity and strength through diversity. It also paints a target on her back, Theron countered. The target's already there, Kiera said quietly. Lady Verena is right. Hiding won't make me safer. It'll just make me look like I'm afraid. Or worse, like you're ashamed of me. I could never be ashamed of you. Then show them that. Kiera met his eyes. I'm terrified, Theron. But I didn't survive everything in Silverpine just to hide in a palace. If I'm going to be queen, let me be queen. Publicly. Completely. The mate bond thrummed with Theron's conflicting emotions, pride in her courage, fear for her safety, love he wasn't quite ready to name. Finally, he nodded. We'll hold a formal presentation ceremony. 1 week from today, the entire court will be invited, along with representatives from major packs. That's not enough time to prepare proper security, Verena protested. It's enough time for me to train her in basic defensive magic. Alara's voice came from the doorway. The court mage entered without invitation, her winter storm eyes fixed on Kiera. 1 week of intensive instruction won't make her a master, but it'll give her enough tools to protect herself in an emergency. You were listening at the door? Aldrich sounded scandalized. Of course I was. Someone needs to keep track of what foolish decisions you're making. Alara moved to stand beside Kiera's chair. The girl has raw talent but zero training. If you're throwing her into the political arena, I'm making sure she doesn't die from magical backlash when she inevitably needs to defend herself. Inevitably? Kiera asked weakly. Court politics are blood sport, girl. And you're the new target everyone wants to test. Alara's expression softened slightly. But you've got me, the king, and these council members, despite their initial resistance, all invested in keeping you alive. You won't face it alone. The words should have been terrifying. Instead, Kiera felt oddly comforted. At least everyone was being honest about the danger, rather than pretending everything would be fine. 1 week, Theron said firmly. We announce the presentation ceremony tomorrow, giving potential conspirators minimal time to organize an attack. Verena, I want triple security at the event. Alara, work with Kiera every day. And Council, his gaze swept the table. You will attend the ceremony and show public support for your future queen. Anyone who can't do that should resign now and save us all time. No one moved. Even the wolves who'd seemed most resistant weren't foolish enough to openly defy their king. Good, Theron said. This meeting is adjourned. We reconvene tomorrow to discuss military positioning in territories where conspirators have been identified. The council members rose, offering bows to Theron, and after brief hesitation to Kiera as well. Lady Verena lingered behind, approaching Kiera directly. I meant what I said earlier, Verena said quietly. You're a target, but you're also brave, clever, and you've already survived situations that would break most wolves. If you need anything, information, resources, someone to talk strategy with, my door is open." "Thank you," Kiera said, surprised by the genuine offer. "Don't thank me yet. I'm hard on potential allies because the ones who survive my testing become the most valuable." Verina's smile was sharp. "Survive your first week at court, and we'll talk about real work." She left, and Kiera found herself alone with Theron and Alara. "Well," Alara said briskly, "that went better than expected. Only half of them want you dead, and the other half are merely skeptical." "Good ratio for a first council meeting, Alara," Theron said warningly. "What?" "The girl needs to understand court realities." The mage turned to Kiera. "Dawn tomorrow. Don't be late. We have 1 week to turn you from a magical disaster into someone who won't accidentally immolate the presentation ceremony." "Encouraging," Kiera muttered. Alara's laugh was surprisingly warm. "You'll do fine, girl. I've seen your type before, more resilient than you look, stronger than you believe. We'll make a proper mage out of you yet." She swept out, leaving Kiera and Theron finally alone. "That was intense," Kiera said. "That was gentle compared to some council meetings." Theron pulled her to her feet, into his arms. "You did wonderfully. Spoke up when needed, asked intelligent questions, didn't let them intimidate you. I was terrified the entire time." "I know. The mate bond told me." He pressed his forehead against hers. "But you didn't show it. That's what matters. Queens need to project confidence even when they're scared." "Is that what you do?" "Every day," he admitted quietly. "Leading a kingdom means constant fear that you'll make wrong decisions, hurt people you're supposed to protect, fail in ways that can't be fixed. But I do it anyway, because someone has to. And now," he pulled back to look at her, "I don't have to do it alone anymore." The vulnerability in his voice made Kiera's chest tight. "We're really doing this. Facing conspirators, navigating court politics, becoming king and queen together. We really are." Theron's smile was tired but genuine. "Think you can handle it?" Kiera thought about everything she'd survived: years of abuse in Silverpine, shadow beast attacks, her father's death, awakening power she didn't understand. She'd faced all of that and was still standing. "I can handle it," she said firmly. "One crisis at a time." "That's my queen," Theron murmured, and kissed her. The mate bond flared bright and hot between them, promising futures neither could fully imagine but both were willing to fight for. Outside the council chamber, the kingdom waited. And in dark corners, conspirators learned that the Alpha King's new mate was more than an Omega elevated beyond her station. She was moon-blessed. She was dangerous. And she wasn't going anywhere. Chapter 9. Fire and Moonlight. Dawn came too quickly. Kiera woke to Mira, shaking her shoulder gently. "My lady, the court mage is waiting. She said if you're late on the first day, she'll turn you into a toad for a week." "She's joking, right?" Kiera asked, stumbling out of bed. Mira's expression was carefully neutral. "I wouldn't test her, my lady." 15 minutes later, Kiera stood in a circular training room, deep in the palace's eastern wing. The space was empty except for Alara, who stood at the center examining Kiera with those unsettling winter storm eyes. "You're 3 minutes late," Alara said. "I didn't know where." "Excuses are for wolves who lack discipline." "You're moon-blessed, which means the magic inside you is always active, always waiting to be channeled. If you can't manage simple punctuality, how will you manage spells that could level this entire palace?" Alara's voice was sharp, but not cruel. "Again, tomorrow, on time." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now, let's see what we're working with." Alara gestured to the center of the room. "Stand there. Close your eyes. Tell me what you feel." Kiera obeyed, closing her eyes and trying to focus on. "What exactly?" "I feel nervous." "Not emotions. Energy. Magic." Alara's voice came from different positions as she circled. "The moon goddess blessed you with lunar power. That power flows through everything. The air, the ground, your own blood. Stop thinking with your human mind and feel with your wolf soul. What's there?" Kiera tried to quiet her thoughts, reaching for that place inside where her wolf lived. The space felt different now, since her awakening, larger, brighter, humming with energy that hadn't existed before. And beneath that, she felt it. Threads of silver light weaving through the air, connecting everything. They pulsed with rhythm like heartbeats, ancient and patient. I feel threads, Kiara whispered. Silver threads connecting everything. Good. Satisfaction colored Alara's voice. Those threads are ley lines, channels of magical energy that crisscross the world. Most wolves can't perceive them at all. You're seeing them naturally, which confirms your blessing. Now, reach for one of those threads. Gently. Don't pull. Just touch. Kiara extended her awareness toward the nearest silver thread. The moment she made contact, power surged through her like lightning. Her eyes snapped open, and she gasped as energy crackled across her skin in visible sparks. Too much, Alara barked. Release it before you overload. But Kiara didn't know how. The power kept flowing, building pressure until her entire body glowed with silver light. She could feel it wanting to explode outward, to release in whatever direction it could find. Alara moved with speed that belied her age, pressing her hands to Kiara's temples. Channel through me. Now. Instinctively, Kiara redirected the flow toward Alara. The court mage absorbed the excess energy with practiced ease, grounding it safely until the pressure subsided, and Kiara could breathe again. What happened? Kiara panted, her heart racing. You touched a major ley line without proper grounding, Alara said matter-of-factly. If I hadn't been here, you would have released that energy explosively, probably destroyed half the training wing, and yourself along with it. She stepped back, examining Kiara critically. But you redirected the flow when I instructed you. Good instincts. That's teachable. I almost killed us both and you're praising me? You almost killed yourself. Alara corrected. I was never in danger. I've been managing magical overload for 40 years. But yes, I'm praising you. Most students panic and make the overload worse. You kept enough presence of mind to follow instructions. Her expression softened slightly. You'll make mistakes, girl. Magic is dangerous and unpredictable. The key is making survivable mistakes and learning from them. The next 6 hours were the most exhausting of Kiara's life. Alara taught her basic grounding techniques, ways to connect with earth energy to prevent magical overload. They practiced touch and release exercises with the ley lines, building Kiara's control gradually, and Alara explained magical theory that made Kiara's head spin. Lunar magic is different from elemental magic, Alara lectured as they took a brief water break. Elemental mages draw power from fire, water, earth, or air. You draw from the moon itself, from cycles, emotions, the tides of power that ebb and flow with lunar phases. That makes you incredibly powerful during full moons and blood moons, but weaker during new moons. Understanding your own rhythms is critical. When's the next full moon? Kiara asked. 4 days before your presentation ceremony, Alara said. Which means you'll be at peak power during the event. Good for defending yourself if needed, but also dangerous. You'll need iron discipline to avoid accidentally lashing out if someone provokes you. What happens if I lose control during the ceremony? People die, Alara said bluntly. Probably including you, since uncontrolled lunar magic tends to immolate its caster. That's why we're training. By the time you stand before that court, you'll have enough control to avoid accidents. Maybe not enough for complex spells, but enough to keep everyone alive. That's a low bar. It's an appropriate bar for 1 week of training. Alara's expression turned serious. Listen to me, Kiara. You have more raw power than any student I've trained in decades. But power without discipline is just destruction waiting to happen. Don't try to be impressive. Don't try to prove anything. Just focus on control. That's how you survive. The words echoed her father's teachings. Knowledge over strength. Control over power. The quiet virtues that kept wolves alive when flashy displays got them killed. I understand, Kiara said. Good. Now show me a basic shield spell. We'll practice until you can summon it reflexively. The training continued until mid-afternoon, when Theron appeared at the training room door. Alara, I need to borrow my mate. She's not done. I have a surprise for her. Theron interrupted gently. And she's been training for 8 hours straight. Even you must admit she needs a break. Elara grumbled but waved Kiera away. Fine. But tomorrow we start at dawn again. And next time, be on time. Yes, ma'am. Theron led Kiera through the palace, his hand warm at the small of her back. How was training? Terrifying, exhausting, and fascinating, Kiera admitted. I almost blew up the training wing within the first 5 minutes. Sounds like a typical session with Elara. Theron smiled. She's harsh, but she's kept more students alive than any other mage in the kingdom. You're in good hands. They emerged into the gardens, where autumn flowers still bloomed in defiance of the approaching winter. And there, near a fountain carved with wolves, stood a small group of people Kiera didn't recognize. These, Theron said, are representatives from 6 different packs. They arrived this morning, requesting audience with the future queen. Kiera's stomach dropped. What? Why didn't anyone tell me? Because I wanted you focused on training, not worried about politics. Theron guided her forward. But I thought you might like to meet them informally first. They're not here to judge, they're here to offer support. The representatives stepped forward, and Kiera realized with shock that several were Omegas. Their posture, their deference to the others in their groups, marked them clearly. Your Majesty, one woman said, bowing to Theron and then, more deeply, to Kiera. My name is Sarah. I'm Omega of the Riverwood Pack. When word spread that an Omega had become the Alpha King's mate, that she'd awakened as moon-blessed and would be queen, her voice cracked with emotion. You gave us hope, all of us who've been treated as lesser, who've been told our entire lives that we don't matter. You proved them wrong. I didn't do anything special, Kiera protested. I just survived. That's everything, another Omega, a young man said quietly. You survived and became more. That's what we all dream of but never thought possible. The words hit Kiera like physical blows. She'd been so focused on her own journey, her own transformation, that she hadn't considered how it might affect other Omegas across the kingdom. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say you'll remember us, Sarah said. When you're queen, when you have power and influence, remember what it was like to be Omega. Remember that we exist, that we matter, that we deserve better than what most packs give us. The weight of expectation settled on Kiera's shoulders. These wolves weren't just congratulating her, they were asking her to be their voice, their advocate, their hope for change. I promise, Kiera said firmly. I promise I'll never forget where I came from or what it felt like to be invisible. And I promise that when I'm queen, things will change. Not overnight, not perfectly, but they will change. The Omegas smiled genuine expressions of relief and gratitude that made Kiera's chest tight. They spent the next hour talking, sharing stories of pack life across different territories. Some packs treated Omegas with basic dignity, others were as cruel as Silverpine had been, and a precious few, had already begun implementing changes based on Theron's new decree about Omega treatment. It's not perfect, Sarah admitted. Some alphas are only following the decree because they fear royal punishment, not because they truly believe Omegas deserve better. But it's a start, and having you as queen will make the decree impossible to ignore. When the representatives finally left, promising to spread word of their meeting, Kiera felt exhausted in an entirely different way than training had left her. That was your surprise? She asked Theron. Part of it. I wanted you to see the impact you're having, even before the presentation ceremony. You're not just becoming queen for political reasons, you're becoming a symbol for wolves who've never had one before. He led her to a bench overlooking the gardens. But there's more. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, delicate silver worked into the shape of a crescent moon, with a stone that seemed to glow with its own internal light. This was my mother's, Theron said quietly. The queen's ring, passed down through generations. She was moon-blessed too, though not as powerful as you. She would have loved meeting you, seeing someone carry on the tradition she thought had died with her. Kiera's hands trembled as Theron slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, warming against her skin, as if recognizing its new wearer. Your mother was moon-blessed? Kiera whispered. She was. And she changed things too. Rewrote laws, challenged traditions, made enemies among those who preferred the old ways. Theron's voice was soft with memory. Some say that's why she died young, that the stress of constant political battles weakened her. But I think she just burned too bright, too fast, gave everything she had to, making the kingdom better, and there wasn't enough left to sustain herself. The warning was clear: don't burn yourself out, don't give so much that nothing remains. I'll be careful, Kiera promised. I'll make sure you are. Theron pulled her close, and they sat together as the sun set, painting the gardens gold and crimson. You're not alone in this, Kiera. Whatever comes, we face it together. The mate bond hummed with contentment, and for a moment, everything felt right, safe, possible. Then Sienna appeared, running across the gardens with her expression grim. My king, she panted. We've received intelligence. The Shadow Pact is planning something, a major attack. When? Theron was on his feet instantly. The night of the presentation ceremony. They're going to strike when the entire court is gathered in one place. Sienna's eyes met Kiera's. And their primary target isn't you, Your Majesty. It's her. They want to kill the moon-blessed queen before she can be formally crowned. The peace shattered. Reality crashed back in danger. Conspiracy. Wolves who wanted her dead. Then we'll be ready, Theron said, his voice hard. Double the guard. Triple security. And Alara, he turned to where the mage had appeared silently behind them. Accelerate Kiera's training. She needs to be able to defend herself in 3 days, not 7. That's not enough time, Alara protested. Make it enough. Theron's eyes burned gold with alpha command. Because I'm not losing her to conspirators who think they can kill their way to a different future. Kiera stood, the queen's ring heavy on her finger, and felt her wolf rise within her, not with fear, but with determination. They wanted to kill her? Let them try. She was moon-blessed, the Alpha King's mate, future queen of all territories, and she had no intention of dying before she'd even begun to live. Chapter 10. The Presentation Ceremony. The next 3 days passed in a blur of intensive training that pushed Kiera to her absolute limits. Alara was merciless. They trained from before dawn until long after dark, with only brief breaks for meals that Kiera barely tasted. Shield spells, offensive magic, grounding techniques, emergency teleportation. Alara crammed weeks of instruction into 72 hours. Again, Alara barked as Kiera's shield flickered and failed for the 3rd time. The Shadow Pact will not give you chances to rest. They'll strike fast, hard, and without mercy. Your shield must be reflexive, instantaneous, unbreakable. Kiera summoned the magic again, pulling from the ley lines with more control now. Silver light erupted around her, forming a barrier that held solid even when Alara struck it with a bolt of pure energy. Better, Alara said grudgingly. Again. Faster this time. By the morning of the presentation ceremony, Kiera could summon shields without conscious thought, redirect hostile magic, and even manage basic offensive spells. She wasn't a master, not even close, but she was no longer helpless. You'll survive, Alara said as their final session ended. You might even impress a few people, but remember the goal is staying alive, not showing off. If things go wrong tonight, protect yourself first. The king has his own guards. Let them handle the broader threats. What if they can't? Kiera asked quietly. Then you do what you've always done, you survive. Alara's expression softened. I've trained many students, girl. Most were stronger than you when they started, more naturally talented, better connected. But you have something they lacked. You have the will to keep going even when everything says you should quit. That's worth more than raw power. The words stayed with Kiera as she returned to her chambers, where Mira waited with the ceremonial gown. It was breathtaking white silk that seemed to glow with its own light, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that matched the runic markings on Kiera's skin. The dress was both armor and art, designed to show everyone exactly what she was. Moon-blessed. Powerful. Unashamed. You look like the queens in the old paintings, Mira whispered as she fastened the final clasp. The ones who ruled beside the first Alpha Kings, before the Purge Wars tried to destroy all magic. Kiera studied herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was every trace of the timid Omega from Silverpine. In her place stood someone regal, dangerous, ready for whatever came next. A knock at the connecting door. "Kiera, may I come in?" "Yes." Theron entered, and his expression when he saw her made the mate bond flare with heat and pride and something deeper. "You're magnificent," he said simply. He wore ceremonial armor black with silver accents, the royal crest prominent on his chest. He looked every inch the Alpha King. Powerful and commanding. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," Kiera admitted. "But I'm going anyway." His smile was warm. "That's all anyone can ask." He offered his arm. "Come. Our kingdom awaits." They walked through the palace corridors toward the great hall, where hundreds of wolves had gathered. Kiera could hear them through the massive doors, conversations, laughter, the rustle of formal attire. Sienna waited outside with a full contingent of guards. "Security is as tight as we can make it," she said quietly. Every entrance monitored, every guest vetted 3 times, guards stationed throughout the hall. "But my king, if the Shadow Pact is truly planning an attack, then we'll deal with it," Theron said firmly. "We cannot let fear dictate our actions. This ceremony happens tonight." As planned, the doors swung open, and a herald's voice rang out, presenting His Majesty, Theron Blackwood, Alpha King of all territories, and his mate, Lady Kiera, the Moon-Blessed. The crowd fell silent as Kiera and Theron entered, hundreds of eyes fixed on them. Nobles, pack representatives, warriors, servants, every rank and station represented. And at the front, on a raised platform, stood the council members and Elder Rowan, who would perform the formal presentation ritual. Kiera walked with her head high, letting them see her fully. Let them judge, question, doubt. She'd proven herself already, and she'd prove herself again if necessary. They ascended the platform, and Elder Rowan stepped forward. His ancient voice carried through the hall with surprising strength. "We gather tonight to witness a sacred ceremony, the presentation of a future queen. The moon goddess, in her wisdom, has blessed our king with a true mate, a wolf of rare power and proven courage." His eyes found Kiera's. "Lady Kiera, do you accept the responsibilities of queenship, to serve alongside the Alpha King, to protect the kingdom's wolves, to uphold the laws and traditions that bind us together?" "I do," Kiera said clearly, her voice not wavering. "And do you swear to honor the mate bond, to stand beside your king in times of peace and war, to be his counsel, his partner, his equal in all things?" "I do." Elder Rowan turned to Theron. "Your Majesty, do you confirm this mating? Do you claim Lady Kiera as your queen, your mate, your chosen companion for all the years you reign?" "I do," Theron said, his voice resonating with alpha power. "Before the moon goddess and all assembled witnesses, I claim Kiera as mine, my mate, my queen, and anyone who threatens her, threatens me directly." The warning was clear. Elder Rowan nodded approval and produced a ceremonial blade, ancient silver that had been used in royal ceremonies for centuries. "Then by the power vested in me as keeper of traditions, I bind this mating officially." He made a small cut on Theron's palm, then on Kiera's. "Blood to blood, soul to soul, bound by the moon goddess's blessing. Let no wolf separate what she has joined." Theron pressed his bleeding palm to Kiera's, and the mate bond exploded with power. Silver light erupted from their joined hands, washing over the entire hall in a wave of pure lunar magic. Wolves gasped. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the blessing's intensity, and Kiera felt it, the final click of the bond settling into place, permanent and unbreakable. She was queen. Officially. Completely. The crowd erupted in applause, some enthusiastic, others merely polite, but all acknowledging what had occurred. Then the explosion ripped through the eastern wall. Chaos erupted instantly. Wolves screamed and scattered as debris rained down. Through the gaping hole in the wall poured shadow beasts, not 3 this time, but dozens, their void-black forms shrieking as they attacked indiscriminately. And behind them came wolves in dark clothing, their faces covered, weapons drawn. The Shadow Pact had come. Protect the king and queen. Sienna's voice cut through the chaos as guards formed a defensive circle. But the attackers weren't focused on Theron. They were coming for Kiera, exactly as intelligence had predicted. "You want me?" Kiera shouted, her voice carrying over the screams. "Then come get me." She summoned the shield spell Alara had drilled into her, silver light forming a barrier around herself and Theron. A shadow beast's claws struck the barrier and recoiled, unable to penetrate. "Kiera, what are you doing?" Theron demanded. "Drawing them away from civilians," she said. "Alara taught me how to fight. Let me fight." She didn't wait for permission. Releasing one side of the shield, Kiera sent a blast of lunar magic toward the nearest shadow beast. The creature shrieked as the light burned through its void flesh, dissolving it back to darkness. Another beast lunged. Kiera redirected its momentum with a technique Alara had shown her, sending it crashing into two conspirators who'd been trying to flank her. Around them, the battle raged. Theron's guards fought with brutal efficiency, taking down attackers with coordinated strikes. Sienna was a blur of movement, her blade finding targets with lethal precision. And scattered throughout the hall, loyal wolves fought back against the conspirators who'd infiltrated the ceremony. But there were too many shadow beasts. For every one destroyed, two more seemed to appear. "They're summoning reinforcements," Theron snarled, his claws tearing through a conspirator's throat. "Someone's maintaining an active portal. We need to find it and shut it down." Kiera closed her eyes briefly, reaching for the magical sight Alara had taught her. There, in the corner of the hall, nearly hidden behind overturned tables, a swirling vortex of void energy, and standing beside it, hands raised in ritual casting, was a figure in a hooded robe. "There!" Kiera pointed. "The summoner." But between them and the portal stood a wall of shadow beasts and armed conspirators. "We'll never reach it in time," Sienna said, appearing beside them with blood on her blade. "I can," Kiera said. The plan formed instantly, dangerous and probably insane. "Alara taught me emergency teleportation, short range only, but enough to cross the hall." "You've practiced it twice," Theron protested. "If you miscalculate, then I die. But if I don't stop that summoner, everyone dies." Kiera met his eyes. "Trust me, please." The mate bond sang with his fear, his pride, his absolute faith in her despite the danger. "Go," he said. "I'll cover you." Kiera gathered her power, feeling the ley lines respond to her call. This was the most complex magic she'd attempted. Teleportation required perfect visualization, absolute focus, and more power than any spell she'd cast before. But she was moon-blessed, and tonight was 3 days past the full moon, her power still near its peak. She visualized the corner by the portal, fixed every detail in her mind, and released the spell. Reality twisted. For a heartbeat, Kiera existed nowhere, suspended between locations in a space that felt infinite and claustrophobic simultaneously. Then she materialized exactly where she'd aimed, directly in front of the hooded summoner. The figure stumbled back in shock. Kiera didn't hesitate. She grabbed the summoner's wrists, disrupting the ritual casting, and sent a pulse of lunar magic through their connection. The summoner screamed as the void portal destabilized. Shadow beasts throughout the hall shrieked in unison as their connection to the void realm severed. "No!" The summoner's voice was female, familiar. She threw back her hood, revealing Lady Farina, the head of intelligence operations. The woman who'd seemed to support Kiera, who'd offered help and resources. "You?" Kiera whispered, betrayal sharp in her chest. "You ruined everything," Farina snarled. "The old order was perfect strength, determining rank, the weak knowing their place. But you had to be special, had to prove Omegas could be powerful, had to give them hope." She tried to wrench free, but Kiera's grip held firm. "I organized this entire conspiracy to preserve the natural way. And I would have succeeded if you'd just died in that cabin with the Alpha King. The natural way," Kiera said, her voice cold, "was killing us. Wolves suffering, Omegas cast aside, power hoarded by those who inherited it rather than earned it. That's not natural. That's just cruelty dressed up as tradition." She sent another pulse of magic through their connection, and Verena collapsed, unconscious. The void portal collapsed completely, without their summoner maintaining the channel. The remaining shadow beasts dissolved like smoke and wind. The conspirators, seeing their monsters vanish and their leader captured, broke. Some fled. Others dropped their weapons and surrendered. And Theron's guards moved through the hall with ruthless efficiency, subduing anyone who'd participated in the attack. Kiera stood in the wreckage of the presentation ceremony, breathing hard, the queen's ring heavy on her finger. "Kiera!" Theron was there in seconds, pulling her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. Scared, exhausted, but fine." She looked at Verina's unconscious form. She was the conspiracy's leader. The entire time, she was right beside you, feeding information to your enemies. And you stopped her. Theron's voice was filled with pride. You teleported across a battlefield, disrupted a void summoning, and captured the conspiracy's leader. All in your first week as queen. Technically, I'm not officially queen until you are now. Theron pulled out the ceremonial blade again, the one Elder Rowan had used for the bonding. The presentation was interrupted, but the mating is complete, and I think everyone here just witnessed exactly what kind of queen you'll be. He turned to address the hall, where wolves were slowly emerging from hiding, assessing damage, helping the wounded. "Citizens of the kingdom," Theron's voice carried with alpha authority. "Tonight you witnessed an attack by wolves who wanted to drag us back to dark times, who believed strength alone should determine worth, who thought they could murder their way to power." His arm tightened around Kiera. "And you witnessed them fail. Because this Omega, this moon-blessed queen, proved that courage, intelligence, and determination matter more than birth rank. She saved this kingdom tonight. All of us owe her a debt we can never fully repay." The hall erupted in cheers, genuine this time, wolves celebrating not just survival but victory. And Kiera saw it in their faces: respect, gratitude, hope. She'd proven herself. Not just to the council or the court, but to ordinary wolves who'd witnessed her stand against impossible odds and win. If Kiera's journey from cast-aside Omega to moon-blessed queen reminds you that our worth isn't determined by others' judgments, subscribe to join those who believe transformation is always possible. The aftermath took hours. Wounded wolves were treated. Conspirators were imprisoned. Verina was secured in silver chains deep in the dungeons, where she'd face trial for treason. And slowly, order was restored. By the time Kiera and Theron finally returned to their chambers, dawn was breaking over the mountains. "That was quite a first public appearance," Theron said wryly, helping Kiera out of her ceremonial gown, now torn and blood-stained but still beautiful in its own way. "I aim to make memorable impressions," Kiera replied, exhaustion making her giddy. They collapsed onto the bed together, the mate bond humming with contentment despite the night's violence. "What happens now?" Kiera asked quietly. "Now we rebuild. Root out remaining conspirators, strengthen bonds with loyal packs, implement the changes we've promised." Theron pulled her close. "And we complete the mating properly, when you're ready. No rush, no pressure, but eventually, Kiera agreed. The physical mating would seal their bond permanently, but she wasn't quite ready for that step. "Soon, but not yet. For now, can we just sleep?" "We can do anything you want," Theron murmured. "You're the queen. You make the rules." Queen. The title still felt surreal, but it was real. Permanent. Hers. Kiera closed her eyes, feeling Theron's warmth beside her, the mate bond wrapping around them both, and let herself finally relax. She'd survived. More than survived, she'd won. The Omega cast aside by her pack had become the moon-blessed queen who saved a kingdom. And this, Kiera thought as sleep claimed her, was only the beginning. Epilogue. 6 months later, Kiera stood in the royal archives, surrounded by ancient texts as she worked with Alara on a complex defensive spell. "You're getting better," Alara admitted grudgingly. "Only took you half an hour to master what should take most students 3 months. "I had good motivation," Kiera said, thinking of all the wolves, especially Omegas, who looked to her as proof that change was possible. Under her and Theron's rule, the kingdom had transformed. Laws protecting Omegas were now enforced rigorously. Packs that mistreated their weakest members found themselves under investigation. And across every territory, wolves who'd been cast aside were finding their voices, their power, their worth. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. but it was happening. The door opened, and Theron entered with Sienna. "The Silverpine delegation is here," he said. "They're asking to meet with you." Kiera's stomach tightened. She hadn't returned to Silverpine since leaving 6 months ago. Hadn't seen Alpha Donovan or Sylvia, or any of the wolves who'd made her life miserable. "What do they want?" she asked. "To apologize," Sienna said. "Officially. Donovan implemented every change you demanded, integrated Omegas fully into pack life, and personally hunted down 2 more conspirators hiding in his territory. He wants to make amends." Kiera thought of the girl she'd been small, scared, convinced she was worthless. That girl would have accepted any apology eagerly, desperate for acknowledgement. But she wasn't that girl anymore. "Tell them," Kiera said slowly, "that I accept their efforts to change, that I'm glad Silverpine is treating its Omegas better, but that I owe them nothing, no forgiveness, no recognition, no validation of their belated attempts at decency. They can keep improving because it's right, not because they think it will earn my approval." Theron's smile was proud. "That's my queen." Later that night, as they shared a quiet dinner on their private balcony overlooking the mountains, Kiera reflected on how far she'd come, from nothing to everything, from Omega to Moon Blessed, from invisible to unforgettable. "What are you thinking about?" Theron asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "About blizzards," Kiera said softly. "About 15 wolves scratching at my door, and how terrified I was to let them in. How one choice, one moment of choosing compassion over fear changed everything." "You changed everything," Theron corrected. "The blizzard just gave you the opportunity. Everything that came after the courage, the magic, the transformation, that was all you." Kiera looked at the mate mark on her neck, now complete after they'd finalized their mating last month. The silver sigil glowed faintly in the moonlight, proof of a bond that would last their entire lives. "I never thought I could be happy," she admitted. "For so many years, I just focused on surviving. Being happy seemed impossible, like something that happened to other wolves but never to me. And now I'm happy." The words felt foreign but true. "Scared sometimes, overwhelmed often, but genuinely happy. Is that strange?" "It's perfect," Theron said. He raised his glass. "To blizzards, to choices that change everything, and to queens who prove that worth comes from within, not from the judgments of wolves too blind to recognize greatness when they see it." Kiera raised her own glass, the queen's ring catching moonlight. "To new beginnings." They drank together as the moon rose full and bright over the kingdom, their home, their future stretching out like an unwritten story. And somewhere in that vast territory, other Omegas looked up at the same moon and dared to hope. Because if Kiera could transform from nothing to queen, then anything was possible. The old ways were dying, the new ways were just beginning, and the moon-blessed queen would make sure every wolf, regardless of rank or birth, had the chance to become more than what others told them they could be. That was her promise. That was her purpose. That was her crown.